I'd like to call the Hartford School Board of Directors meeting for March 13th to order. And the first order of business is changes, additions, and approval of the agenda. I know there's a couple of items that we have that need to be added.
May I?
Yes.
First of all, for the board, we are requesting to have an executive session after the end of the meeting. And secondly, we would like to add a student appreciation recognition they would like to present to the rest of the people here, and that's the two changes I have.
And I would imagine we would be doing those at the top end.
Yes, please. I'm sorry. I forgot that.
I have another one.
That's up?
Yeah, Mrs. Potter is here with a short presentation.
Yeah.
Is that the same one?
Yeah, that same one.
Okay, all right, so she beat me to it. Getting to why Washington trip.
Right.
All right, I couldn't quite.
Here's a couple.
And just so everybody knows, we're gonna try to get back to, you know, our recognition piece that we were doing, you know, at the beginning of the year before budget time. But, you know, we have a lot to celebrate, you know, it's been an incredible, you know, winter, you know, season for our kids and for students. And it's just an exciting time. So we'd like, you know, we're gonna take time to recognize all of those amazing young people.
So I have a couple more packets. I think there were some. I'm never sure how many people are gonna come, and I don't like to raise paper, so. Sometimes I make 10 and I throw out 6, and sometimes I make 10 and need 20 more. Can't quite get it right.
Okay, if there's no other additions or changes to the agenda,
I make a motion that we accept the agenda with changes.
second. So we have a motion and a second to accept the agenda as amended. All in favor?
I
Opposed? So moved. So the first order of business would be, and
Well, we are very pleased to have several people, two teachers, two parents, two everything over there, and two outstanding kids. And we would love to hear what you did in DC.
Yeah, so actually, we've done quite a few things this winter with Hartford Community Coalition. I think most of you are aware, Emily Zamrioni is the director of Hartford Community Coalition, and we partner really closely with them. I got accepted to do a presentation on youth-led prevention efforts at CADCA, which is the national something. But anyway, so I was like, okay, let's bring some kids. And then they loved the kids' involvement so much that they just took the kids and were like, tell us all about this. And so we got to travel down, HCC sponsored us to travel by train, an 11-hour train ride with middle schoolers, and they did fabulous. Until about 9 o'clock at night, it started to go down in Jersey, but we got through it. It was good. And so when we learned a ton, we walked around, like there was a lot of learning that happened. And so we got to do a lot of stuff in addition to the actual, the main event for the kids was really, well, what was the main event for you guys? It wasn't necessarily presented.
I think not presenting probably, I mean, that was something too. I think going down there and like seeing that part, because I've never been there. I mean, I could totally go back though.
And we didn't go to Walmart.
And we didn't go to Walmart, even though Miss Potter's husband said you can't go to Washington without going to Walmart.
No.
Right there.
It's Andy. So we took a tour bus around that told us all the history, and so they had a lot of learning. We went to the Natural History Museum and saw the Hope Diamond, so it was really cool. I just wanted to highlight our partnership, and we've done lots of other things too. This year, we went up to the State House to see Coach Christie at the State House and do the VCAT, the Vermont Kids Against Tobacco, which actually Zala started that this year at the school. And to do a rally against flavored vapes. And what else? We just did on Tuesday, a presentation to Vermont Educators Conference. And so those were the wonderful getting to why they were not, well, Zala did that one. And I have a mom of somebody back there who, Miss Parker, whose daughter did a fabulous job, and she's part of the Getting to Why too, and presented on Tuesday at the Emily conference in Burlington. So I just wanted to have some good news to start this out, and I hope that we can honor these kids and focus on some of the really cool stuff that they're doing.
Does everyone in the audience know what Getting to Why is? Oh, I see some notes. You want to give them a note?
Also, I don't know.
Okay, give them a little brief,
Again,
Getting to Why is.
Sure, so it's the Hartford Community Coalition's way of engaging youth in a prevention effort. So we asked them to look at their YRBS data, their youth risk behavior survey data. So that's the biennial survey that they take in school that asks things like, do you wear a bike helmet? Do you drink 8 ounces of, or how many, eight ounces of glasses of water a day, right? Do you exercise? What kind of drugs are you putting in your body? What kind of other risky activities are you doing? And so they all look at that data. You remember going through all that?
That was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. Why?
It was a nightmare.
Well, and it's really surprising, I think, a lot for some of the kids that, like, wow, 13% of us say that, you know, they do X, Y, Z, or only so many parents disapprove of cannabis use. Wow, we need to do something about that. And so what that does is engage the kids into some kind of proactive plan that they want to implement within the school. So a couple of things that we've been able to do. We did a bathroom beautification project 2 years ago, where
We painted the bathrooms, like there was wording on it where probably shouldn't say in school, but like, no one loves you, kill yourself and stuff like that, inappropriate drawings, and we're like, it's gotta go. I mean, in every stall, it didn't matter, it just would be right there. So we just painted over it, all they did.
And we learned not to put vines in the boys'
Yeah.
bathrooms. We decorated it all up with, you can do this, you got this. The boys are not as receptive generally to having their bathrooms beautified and, you know, have that as a safe, loving space. Like, so we learned we always learn some lessons.
Yeah.
Right? And what are we doing this year, Zila?
Oh, the bully box, we just recently talked about this today at lunch. It's like a box we're gonna make, and like, we're gonna have sticky notes and a piece of paper. And it's gonna be like, people can come up and put the piece of paper, and it's like, if you're getting bullied, someone can, you know, write on there and put it in the note. And we'll find out, and then like, you can set up a meeting with Miss Potter or at the office. And you can talk about it there.
And they also came up with some other lovely ideas tied to that, because bullying has come up this year quite a bit. And it's a ongoing thing. But one of the things was, we don't know where to get help, you know, as far as like, there's text lines, please stop with that. As far as there's helplines and text lines and things, and then there is a new thing on the website, I think, that people can submit
Yeah.
an anonymous, and that was actually the kids came up with, is there a way anonymously to report something going on? So is that's up and running?
Yep.
Yeah, so the kids actually came to that on their own too.
See it right there, I got the website up, so it should be on the top of every
Yeah.
page, so all the schools plus the district.
Yeah.
Report a concern, and then it brings you to a form that.
Yeah.
Sort of tries to drill down a little on what kind of concern. Is it
And this is a,
question about the budget, is it a
yeah,
bully issue at the school, is it a safety?
and sometimes kids don't wanna say they worry about the repercussions of that report, you know, so this is a nice way.
Yeah.
So this was really lovely that the kids came up with this idea and at the same time, you all came up with it and did it, so it happens sometimes.
Well, I'll share, our senior most member came up with the idea, so that shows the compatibility of our senior most member and our kids.
Yeah, yeah, that's lovely. So yeah, that's what we're working on this year, and we have lots of groups and things where kids are getting involved and they're energetic, and I just want to say I appreciate the school board and Tom has been very, when I said I'm taking middle schoolers to DC, he just said, sounds awesome. And so, well, maybe it's so many words, but like, just, it is,
No, I meant to.
we have, we have a lot of support, in doing those innovative things. There's not a lot of red tape to get through and questioning of that. So I just want to say we appreciate it.
We do, and thank you for letting them go. If you haven't checked your email yet today, I did make sure that you had a link to a video that we created, not only of their presentation, but some of the messaging that they were trying to convey during their presentation. And the cool thing about this presentation, it was the 20th annual SAMHSA, so that's our Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, that's a National Organizations Prevention Day, which kicked off the coalition days of the conference later.
And they were the youngest.
And they were the youngest, they've never had middle school
Ah,
there ever, right? So you made it not scary for them.
Yeah.
And middle school and elementary are the best times to do prevention. I mean, they,
Yeah,
Mm.
also pro tip when you're going on vacation, do not use an Uber. Right after we went on the SAMHSA thing, like I had to, like, we had to use an Uber. And like the guy wouldn't, like, he was like talking about every single building. And like, I just started to feel sick and, yeah, don't use an Uber.
there were lots of lessons
Yeah.
learned, so I did share that.
Yeah, you have to pay $65 to feel sick these days.
They're not cheating.
And
great lesson learned.
if you haven't watched the video, Joseph has some fabulous one-liners during
Yes.
our presentation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got a lot of laughs, that guy, so, we encourage you to,
Do like a little book.
Dr. had to come up and get it all authorized.
yes, right.
That'd be good.
So anyway, we won't take up too much more of your time. Do you have any questions for these youngsters?
The video was great. I have.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you
and
for-
us going a little over on the
Thank you
side.
so much. It's okay. Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
I'm gonna, after 5 o'clock, things go downhill on that scoop.
Yeah.
I don't want any distractions for you guys, and it's gonna get a little more like exciting as the
Yeah, oh,
night
yeah.
goes on.
Exciting. That's a good way to put it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you.
Take care.
Goodness gracious. That's part of my report. The rest I send everybody up.
Well, we appreciate it. So the next order of business, is the FY 25 revised budget, discussion. So, Tom and Jake.
Chief, do you want to start on?
the projected ed tax.
A little lead in for Jake, I think everybody knows, Jacob Ravina. as you know, the budget was rescinded because of the goings on up in Montpelier, late February, or mid-February, I guess. And, so our original budget, after we worked on it for several months, the impact on taxpayers we felt was unreasonable with the revenue changes from Montpelier. I think it resulted in a 39 or
40-something.
yeah, 40-something% increase on the homestead property tax, which was not only unreasonable, but disrespectful to ask the taxpayers of Hartford to fund. So the school board rescinded that budget, which gave us till April 15th to rework a budget and re-vote on it. So the administrators have been working hard to meet the board's goal. The board gave me a goal of reducing the budget so it was no more than an 18.5% increase on the property tax. So for the last several weeks, we've been working on that. We've had at least 3, maybe 4-hour meetings, most of the time in this room, working through a process to try to figure out, what was near and dear to our hearts and what was, really important, and we couldn't live without, any reduction to heart. We've been working for all the years that I've been here, probably many before, to build our budget, build our programs, and get to where we're at now. So nothing is easy to reduce, but, we looked at supplies and materials, and equipment, and facility projects, and staffing, staff, in central office, staff in maintenance, staff in custodial, paraprofessionals, teachers, everything we possibly could look at to, reduce the budget by $2.1 million. So this is the result of that. And, let JB talk a little bit about how we got there and where we're at.
Yeah.
Ask a question before you start. Exactly how many positions, just a new revised budget, did we have to do?
I think, we had to cut teaching positions. Getting into particulars about how many and which positions we cut at this point.
I'm Tom, I'm only interested.
Yeah.
What was the total number that we had to reduce? In reality, when you get the empty positions out of it, how many positions are we looking at?
All right. Let me let Jake start and I'll get those. Yeah, I have an estimate, so I can give you a pretty accurate number.
So this is 2.0 budgets. It's been a very challenging process trying to get here. Because we've been getting updates and changes from the state and the AV just about every week, which has affected the numbers just about every day. With the 2.1 million, this budget also includes applying $680,000 of the fund balance to offset taxes. So that gets us to 18.5. Presently, with the current data we have on the homestead, and then about 12.9 on the income. The homestead gets a 6-cent decrease from the state with the enactment of H850. And then there's also language in there, which I just found out about was last week. That the income base also gets the same percentage decrease. So that helped bump the income base increase down a little bit. But I've attached the function and object sheets for the general fund in your packets. Pretty much where we are. Homestead, 12.9%. Is the current estimated. But as far as like the actual discount, that's 4.160%.
Thank you.
You wanna go over anything with the function or object?
There's nothing really specific that I wanted to hit on. There's just more of the breakout of the present budget that we have for the general fund.
No, so for folks that are looking, those, the bottom two lines, Tom, on the, on the tax rate sheet, you know, are the actual property tax components based on the homestead versus homestead income. And so those two numbers are the critical numbers that affect us as taxpayers, you know, which is if you pay based on homestead value, you know, you're looking at that 18.5 versus paying on income, you're looking at the 12.9. And the numbers, you know, that's based on per 100,000 valuation. There is a calculator that will be on our webpage. It's a link to the Vermont Tax Department, so you can determine for yourself. And you submit all of your own numbers on that calculator, and it's from the tax department. And it'll tell you what your rebate will be. Right. And we include that, you know, with our information for folks as well.
Always in the slides that we have, but we'll be sure to post that on the website to get people. After that.
Because most people are eligible for that, and it's up to $8,000 reduction, you know, depending on your income, your total household income. You know, for the thing.
All right, so, give you a little more specific, there's no way you're gonna get to $2.1 million cut in the school budget without affecting staff. It's just 75 to 80% of the budget made up of people. And very little of the budget is, you know, all the other stuff, buildings, equipment, buses. So in the end, to get to the board's goal, there was 12 professional positions cut, proposed to be cut, 10 support staff positions, approximately $250,000 equipment, which includes $130,000 in technology equipment. Fortunately, we've been doing really well in that area for the last several years, foregoing equipment purchase in that area, technology purchase is probably okay for a year. The majority of the positions are vacant. As bad as the teacher shortage is, this is maybe one time when there's a little glimmer of hope, because a lot of the positions we haven't been able to fill because of the teacher shortage. That's still not great. Obviously, if you can't fill positions, it has an impact on the other teachers, but you know, like I said, there's absolutely no way to get to $2.1 million without a reduction in staff. Do you think of anything I missed?
How many of the positions that were cut were vacant? How many of the positions that were cut were vacant? You said the majority, but how many though?
Vacant, yeah, I'd have to look up that number exactly. And again, we haven't had an opportunity because we didn't know what the board was gonna do tonight. So we don't know exactly what if you were gonna support, you know, what we did to get to your goal of 18.5%, or if you change it, you know, it's different number of people. So getting too specific into the details of what was cut is problematic, because people don't know yet. None of the principals have had a chance to talk to that staff about, you know, what's been reduced. I'd like to do that very thoughtfully and very carefully.
That was one of the reasons why I asked the question. Because I'd like, before we make a decision, I'd like to know what the impact is to our total program by removing these positions.
Everyone had to make a cut proportionate to their share of the total students. That's how we do it. So everyone, you know, all the 5 big schools made a reduction to their budgets. I don't get into micromanaging what they do. They follow the process. Obviously, I supervise it. So I can tell you how many are filled. It's just gonna take me a second. If you don't mind reading.
This calculator doesn't, give us the, that capability we used to have, right, as far as, changing any number. What it look like.
Theoretically, yes.
No, the only reason, that question, was asked is this whole process, especially because of Act 127, changed how that works, actually. Because before, any person that was into Excel could say to themselves, well, if we had 20 more students, what would that look like? For example, and everything on that chart would change. Right down to that percentage number. And that's why, it's important for us to be aware of, those factors too. As far as with all of this construction and new families coming online, that's gonna have a direct effect. And that's happening this spring. Just drive by the building, on the left as you're going into West Lebanon, and that's 100 units, So, it's gonna be hard to say, how many kids come, once those doors open, and they're already filled. Because we're in the middle of flood, but we don't know who they are as far as the size of the families or what have you. And we're gonna have to address that too, as we look at it, depending on which age group they are. So.
Chief, with these numbers, what's the comparison between cost per pupil now versus what it would be next year? Did it change a lot? Presumably it went down.
It's a little bit of apples and oranges, because keep in mind that this is the first year where we're having what they're calling the long-term weighted average. So they're basically counting kids differently versus last year where we just had equalized pupils. So it's not exactly, a direct comparison. But I mean, the way that they're counting kids now, we're counting more kids.
As Tom's doing that calculation and to help with understanding the question and the response, that comparison for folks is last year at this time, a high school student was valued at 1.5.
Think, can't remember the exact numbers.
Now it's 1.47. So you can see just that one, group of students has changed, let alone all of them have changed. That was part of the Act 127, and that's what's kind of created this unique situation of, I'll just call it what it is, phantom numbers. Because we've never had to deal with this new weighting formula. But that is what we're dealing with, and that's on the books. One of the comparisons that, we've asked Jacob and Tom to come up with is, to the best of our knowledge at this point, what were the trends for the last 4 budgets coming into this versus now? And how is that affecting, that rate? And then there are very tangible things that we know have had a drastic effect on it. And one of them is our property values altogether. And that's that CLA number you keep hearing about. And usually, if you look on this chart, it's in the 60s. 3 budgets ago, it was in the high 80s. Yeah. When that number goes up, our tax rate goes down. So as that number started to creep this way, our rate went up. And that's just a direct correlation to just that one factor in how budgets are set. That's every single budget in the state is affected the exact same way.
I mean, overall, Vermont's facing some really tough budget struggles. Because where the state of Vermont used to have, all this money from COVID and everything else that they basically applied towards kind of offsetting taxes. After the COVID funds are running out and expiring, and now we're kind of hitting this cliff of this is over here. I mean, the free lunches for Vermont, that was 30 million, the PCBs, that was 30 million. So quite frankly, I mean, the state of Vermont just doesn't have the same funding that it used to.
Clarification. The tech center and the Wilder School, are they part of these numbers or are they separate?
They're included in the 51 million, but they're not included in the general fund function and object summary because they're self-funded programs.
Because there's so many teachers, about 238 teachers across the district. I think there's somewhere around 135 support staff. I'm not exactly sure on that number. But any teacher that is cut, there are a lot of opportunities for them to look at a position that is vacant in another school or in their own school. But approximately, but the dust hasn't completely settled on it. But approximately 3 of the 12 professional positions have people in them. And about 3 of the 10 support staff positions have people in. So that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be goodbye or being cut, find a different job. There's quite a bit of room for people moving. Retirements, we don't know, resignations yet. We generally have, some significant turnover. I don't know if it'll be less or more this year, given Vermont's funding woes. New Hampshire isn't having those, so that worries me a little, but that's where we're at. considering we reached the goal, you know, we're pretty careful. There are a lot of vacant positions across the district. Again, those are positions we need, or they wouldn't be on the books. You know, the positions we want to fill and wanted to fill. But they're easier to cut when there's no one. Pretty obvious. My biggest worry and most of the administrators at this point, other than the hardship this will create, is 18.5% is still a big increase. A really big increase. You know, generally, since I've been superintendent 13 years now, our increases are somewhere, you know, 3 to 5%. I think last year was a little bit higher, like 8%. But that was one of the highest we've seen. So 18.5 is gonna take a lot of salespersonship by the board, the community, the teachers, all of us to get that passed. I think if the state and the town are able to get the funding straight, get the appraisals done, we'll be in really good shape next year. We certainly can backfill a lot of the positions that were cut. But there's no guarantee that the appraisal is gonna get done. You know, hopefully. I think we have to put a lot of pressure on whoever is responsible for that, because if we drop next year, then it's really gonna be problematic. So. That's about as much as I can say tonight, because any folks impacted don't know. I still need to notify the union of the reduction in each group. Still a lot of work to do between now and when contracts come out. Given the budget's now April 15th, I think we have 15 days to get contracts out after that. For teachers, support staff contracts, I don't think go out until June, but the very busy rest of March.
Well, obviously, whatever we do for the budget, these budget numbers, the town needs to know there's an asterisk attached to it. That if all of a sudden we have an influx of tuition students from a couple of the surrounding towns who are having some major difficulties, money's gotta come from somewhere to support the staff to take care of them.
If it's tuition students, that would be good news, because they come with money, funding. So I mean, if tuition students moved in, you know, the board and administration would be able to turn that into positions if necessary, because they're not coming out of the state funding. Actually, any increases in students, you would get a small addition in your state revenue for Hartford residents, but that doesn't show up for a while. But tuition students would then be sort of money in the bank, so to speak.
You know, that affects our bottom line a lot quicker. One of the other, you know, pieces to this is because of the budgets that were voted down. Normally, what usually happens after town meeting is the Ways and Means Committee, both in the House and the Senate, take that data, which is approximately 85 to 90% of all of the budgets in the state of Vermont, and calculate the new yields, because you'll see this factor in here, and it's one is the property tax yield, and the other one is the income yield. As that number goes up, we're presently at 9,
The homestead yield is 9,785, and the income is 9,946.
When we started this process, those numbers were lower. And those numbers come from the Ways and Means Committee and AOE. But that's how we have to generate the budget, is based on those two numbers. By the end of this session, the legislature always, in order to come up with a balanced budget for the state of Vermont, has to identify the new yield. And those numbers don't come until the end of the session. So even though we might pass the budget at whatever number, we decide. And I've asked Jake, it's been hard to do some other projects, but I wanted him, once we get into next week, is to show the community what that looked like. And then my example is we collectively pass a budget the first week in March. The second week in May, the legislature identifies a new yield. So that budget we passed invariably has always gone down. That tax rate number, because they have had the data to make that change. I'm gonna ask, our finance office to show us that number, what it looks like over the past few years, because it has done that. That's why we've been in the situation where we've had a fund balance revenue in order to make some of the changes that we've needed to do, either adding staff, or, buying down, the tax rate.
Facility.
Right, and facilities.
I mean, one of the things why I'm hesitant when we talk about numbers and people is, that it's a very soft number. Because there's so many moving parts to this. So if the yields increase and we have more revenue, or if an expensive teacher, or a teacher that's higher pay scale and maybe, or has higher, cost benefits leaves, and someone comes in who's less, or smaller health plan or something, it has a big impact. So when the town folks vote in a budget, they're not voting in all the positions and all the stuff that's in the budget. It's that total dollar amount, 52 million something. And, as things change, you get, flex within the budget if something's needed, consults, or this thousands of different lines that sort of move and adjust as we go through the school year. So it's not a set thing, like it's 12 positions as we look at, we were at to get from the 54 million to the 52 million with all the other factors and changes in yields. In the end, it could be less. I don't think it'll have to be more. It's just a lot of moving parts, so it's hard to say those numbers and then be like, well, you said there would be, and yeah, that's like today, it lasts for. That's where we're at, that's where we're, the ballpark we're in, but there are a lot of moving pieces.
I'm
We
just
still,
curious.
like I said, we don't know. We know the retirees for the most part, we don't know the resignations. Most years that I've been in the district, it's somewhere from 27 to 35. I think last year with high, we might have had 40 new teachers.
What does the proposed tax rate look like if we were to only cut the estimated 16 vacant positions? We were to keep the, roughly 6 staff that are currently enrolled. I know it's a rough number, so.
I would have to take a look at how much money that would add back into the budget.
Just curious.
You'd have to guesstimate, like when we look at cuts, at least the first round, we're looking at approximately $100,000 for a professional staff member. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but to start, get a ballpark of what we're trying to do. That's what we do, and support staff are generally around $60,000. It's a very rough estimate because they can range from, 43 to 75, depends what they do, how many days they have, how many hours they work, but, trying to get an average.
So a rough number would be to add, what, $600,000 back to the budget if we were to not cut those 6 positions? So very rough number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, see, normally, with the whiteboard, we'd be able to make that adjustment so you can see it occur like on the screen. It's a little hard, with this calculator because it doesn't work like the old one.
In years past, we literally would have this document.
That's
Live,
active.
and you could say you would take a number off of this 51,043,000 and plug it in, and then it would tell you what the new tax rate is gonna be. I mean, the other thing that's hard for people is that based on today's number, the increase as a result of this revised budget of 51,043,000 is 18.5%. If the yield changes a penny or two, that percentage will be significantly less. If what other factors could change between now and the vote, maybe the yield.
Really, it's the final yield numbers. I mean, when we're starting to develop the budget, until we know the CLA, or the long-term weighted average numbers, we're kind of just best guess. But, I mean, the yields are going to change. They always change, but, this year, I think I've said in previous meetings, I've dealt with 9 different yield numbers, which is historically unheard of. Because you can usually hang your hat on that December tax commissioner's letter as that the yield that everyone passed their budget on. But this year, the numbers have just been constantly changing. Like month to month, we do.
And the cuts, like I said, before, the cuts were really carefully weighed out, so there might be a position that, was reduced, that needs to be changed. So there might be a person in that position, but the position, was seen to need to be changed or reworked or something. So just adding a chunk of money to offset those people might not actually do that. Obviously, give us more money to reduce less positions. But that might not be directly the ones who have people in them, because we sort of prioritize all the 12, all the, 8. Obviously would help, but we've been working since, I forget what date we rescinded the budget, but, was it February 14th?
Which don't.
Yeah, we've been working to that board's target for a while, of 18.5.
Are any of the cuts that you would anticipate with this budget, are any of them coming from the administration, or are they all coming from teachers
No, they're coming from, across the board.
across the
So,
board?
yeah, when we talk about administration, it includes, technology support and all the people that aren't student facing.
And I know I've asked this question before, but for me, this is a question that I need to ask because of the budget. When we're looking at, I'm gonna go back to the, sorry, ladies, the 3 elementary schools. So we've got one that has 2 classes of a certain age that, to peel them off the ceiling take them off the walls because because they have some higher needs and we don't have enough people to be able to take care of that child while the teacher's taking care of the other 17 or 18 that are in that room. And then we've got another school down the road that for that same grade level has one more teacher than what this school has, and plus they have anywhere from 7 to 9 fewer kids in each room. And then we have another school that is not quite as much as that, but still a higher ratio of children to teachers, and definitely a higher ratio of children that have some special needs that they need extra people in there to protect the child that needs that special need and the other children and the adults in that room. How is that going to play into the teacher cuts? How is that going to play into where we're trying to anticipate how many people are going to be coming or how many students might be coming into the school, and no way for us to know at the moment how many nor what grade levels they're going to be in.
That was one of the things we looked at.
Is that
Yeah.
something that was
Yes,
considered
it
and talked
was.
about when we
It
were
was.
talking about
Yeah.
which?
So first of all, we don't have
Staff.
cookie cutter schools, you know, and even the principals at times, you know, get into who has what, and how many
Right.
resources, but overall, their budgets are very commensurate. If you look at, you know, the number of kids and the dollar amounts of their total budgets, what they choose to spend it on, it varies over the years. What's important to that school might be a little different than, you know, what's a focus or important for another. But one of the things we did was look at that, just what you're talking about, where there was really small class sizes. And just study that, try to figure out if, you know, in this budget reduction, we could sort of balance, the class sizes a little better. You know, and, you know, we always want to have capacity because we know we've got this influx of kiddos coming in with the new developments. So we're pretty paranoid about that, where they're gonna fit, but that was definitely considered.
And another consideration I'd like to ask, Matt.
Sure.
Is how do we think that these cuts are going to affect our seniors that are coming up next year? Is that gonna put such a push on them that some may not graduate or some might?
No,
I'm just concerned, I'm concerned about the students and I'm concerned about staff. But my main concern is the students and how all of this is going to affect it. So I know I have a lot of questions that probably seem, well, of course we did that, but I don't know that.
yes,
So they're
So,
always worth asking.
yeah.
well, that's what I'm doing now. I was hoping I was gonna get to it earlier today, but I didn't have time.
So that's exactly why we spend so much
Yeah, I realize.
time and painstaking dealing, you know, trying to figure out how to have the least impact on the kids and the
Right,
least burden on the staff.
right, exactly. And
So,
I have a big concern
you know,
about
obviously, we've had vacant positions, so, you know, one could assume we've lived without them. It's been hard.
that. Yeah,
We've had to do lots of go around, but,
right,
so that says a lot for the process. You know, we hit hard. Part of the problem with the bond is, you know, when we have reductions, what do we do? We cut the things that don't immediately affect kids or staff. That's why we have leaky roofs and, you know, old boilers and, need a bond to get at that. So, you know, that's the first things we look at. What positions don't face kids every day. But, you know, in a district our size, you know, everyone's sort of always looking at my office. It's like, we're very, very thinly staffed. And running a $51 million operation, we need people. In all the years I've been there, I think I've added one person in the central office. Somebody's gonna move.
Somebody's gonna move back.
There you go,
Thank
thank you, Sherry. So we're very thinly staffed, and I looked at that, you know, and we are making production, but still, we gotta be able to pay everyone. People are not happy when we don't pay them on time. We gotta be able to give people the service that they're expecting.
Sure.
But again, I think we did a really good job. That's hard to say because we cut positions, but I don't know how you get at a $2.1 million reduction in a school without cutting people.
Cal,
Yes,
is there anything legally that says we couldn't offer the citizens two choices for a budget? One, total reduction. But the second one, it's the budget that leaves the positions that are currently filled still in the budget. Have we ever done that?
I don't think you can do that. You have to go on a budget. Yeah, that would be totally confusing.
you know, I think the difficulty is what the statute, you know, says about the warrant. Because you have to warn it specifically to a very specific number. And they're looking for one fixed number.
No, I just look at it, if there are three people running for a position, you gotta pick one out of three. So why could we not do the same thing?
That's
A legislature.
no, it's a question for our attorney. With analysis of Title 16, you know, which is the school. That's what all the school laws require in Title 16. The question would be if you could do that. And you know, in order to get that answer, we need the advice of counsel. Because we wouldn't want to put the whole thing in jeopardy.
Right.
You know, because it could result in that, because we're obligated, you know, under Title 16 to warrant the budget. So,
You know, we've worked really hard to get to the number that you asked us to get to. So we're down to the wire. It's due to the town clerk tomorrow. If, you know, 18.5% isn't the number, probably should have told me a couple weeks ago. I don't want to be rude, but, you know, we've been killing ourselves to get to this number very thoughtfully and very respectfully. And we have no time left. Again, if you want to add numbers or change that $52 million, that could be done. $51 million, that could be done, but that's a different percentage than the board asked me to get to.
I think based on what Tom said, the manager's input, they've done a hell of a job. We need to accept it.
Was that in the form of a motion?
I don't think, yeah.
I think it was a general statement.
Okay, thank you.
So far. You know, I'm just looking at the raw data from that, you know, that chart where things changed, you know, like over time. And just looking at, you know, the increase, the percent of increase, you know, in the tax rate. you know, from 23 to 24. In both of those values, you know, you can see what happened during the course of the last 2 years. So with this exponential change, you know, those numbers were, you know, roughly almost $3 million more. You know, and that's why that rate was so high, you know, before we asked the superintendent, you know, and the principals to look at that number. Any other thoughts?
I guess just my concern is that we're planning on growth. We know there's going to be growth with all the housing units that are coming up. We already had a bunch of vacant positions we were trying to fill, now we're gonna cut them. So I mean, how much agility is there, I guess, in the budget to add positions if they're needed?
There's always some. This year will be tighter because of the reductions, but, it just depends on who we hire versus who leaves, you know, what's left to underspend this year or not spent this year. Generally, this money or for increases. And we always add positions as, you know, new students move in depending on their needs or things change. We've always been able to do that, obviously, with $2 million worth of cuts, a little tighter. Yeah, closer to the bone, so to speak.
Yep.
You know, and once you, you know, you get a feel for, you know, how the revenue is actually generated, you know, which is this chart. You can see at that per pupil cost. As that number goes up, everything else goes down. Because there's more revenue. Especially in tax rate. Is that a reasonable, you know, assessment? You know,
The more kids you add, you're decreasing your cost per pupil, which is, you know, we ran into that with one of our grants. That was the ESSER stuff, that was like, your thing was well below, and it's like, well, we got this influx of kids at this one specific school, so you're adding more kids with the same budget number, you're gonna decrease your cost per pupil.
That's how that piece comes together, Garrett.
Generally, when students move in or leave, they don't all leave at the same level. So a lot of, you know, that's always an ongoing issue at the board level is, you know, you got 20 new students, well, they move into 3rd grade at the Ottaguchi school. They, you know, 2 are in kindergarten, 3 are in 4th grade, and, you know, 4 here. So it's always like, there's some capacity built in. We still, even with these reductions, have, you know, very reasonable class size. That was something we hold near and dear. So the other thing with the unfilled positions that are cut is, you know, if funding goes away, you know, we predict, and our appraisals get done, our CLA goes up, we're gonna be doing very well. With the new funding formula, our equalized student count went up 150 kids or so. So we would have done really well. In fact, the original budget, what was that, 53? Yeah, $53 million with the new funding formula. If our CLA didn't drop 10 points, would have resulted in like a 2% increase. So that's how drastic. So I think if things get straightened out next year at this time, you can backfill all the positions you want. You know, and we'll be fine. Without a drastic increase to the taxpayers. It's just between the funding disaster at Montpelier and the drop in town CLA. We got hammered, so to speak.
I have another question now.
Yes.
Are there any new initiatives or new programs that we had planned on adding that have to be cut because of the budget? Because we had to cut so much out of the budget.
No, we have, I mean, we have several underway, you know. Some of the things that we have done, the ongoing projects are DEI work, our reading programs, you know, solidifying. One of the things that was really important to the administrators is maintaining our coaching work, instructional coaches. And, you know, those are people that, you know, don't have an assigned classroom. So sometimes in a budget cut, they're first to go, like, no, those are important to us to improve instruction. What we give kids, so.
But were there any new things that we were planning on that are not already in play, but we were thinking, oh, we could do ABC and this would be great because? Are there any programs like that that were
No,
in the planning stages, maybe that now we have to cut because of the budget?
there was nothing that we were planning on that we said, oh, yeah, that's gonna have to go by the way time. That sticks out in my mind. And
I couldn't remember hearing any, but I did.
thinking of, but you know, even with the original budget, there was nothing that was like, yeah, we're gonna do this. Oh, we gotta forego that.
Tom, is Erica gonna go forward with a program that she wanted to start? I knew she was lagging because she didn't feel it was appropriate
The
to.
program here at
Yeah.
the tech center, yeah, one of the programs we wanted to do,
Was the
is
building.
a second building trades program. And I'm not sure exactly where she's is with that program, but a lot of that was gonna be state funded anyhow.
Right,
But, you know, that's one of the dilemmas we have, is because we have the collaborative programs and the tech center. We included them in all of our conversations about the reductions. Their reductions don't impact Hartford's budget as much as a Hartford program would impact Hartford's budget. So it sort of trickles down, but they all sort of, you know, control their costs, no new positions, no ads, because that would increase the tuition that we pay. And, you know, especially on the Vermont side, everybody's in this, pretty much everyone's in this problem with their budget. So if Hartford's tuition went up at the tech center or the collaboratives, that would be really problematic for the towns that send kids to our schools. So we did try to stabilize, you know, the tuition and make sure there were no big increases. That would be another hardship for whoever sends kids. You know, Hartford has, I think it's like 50% of the kids that come to the tech center. So that would be another increase that, you know, we'd have to absorb. So.
Let's see here. Diligently looking at that.
I've got a lot of questions, but I'm not sure that they need to be asked. Sounds kind of strange, but, like, what percentage is allocated for instructional versus administrative purposes? I don't think Jacob can pull that off the top of his head. And it would take a little digging, but it's something I'm interested in. Another one was, what metrics are we using to evaluate the effectiveness of the budget allocations on student success? You know, still, for those students. So I don't know if that's something you can answer right away, or you need to look into, or
I'd have to do.
maybe get back. I would
It's a
really
good
like to
question,
know that.
Helen. Does the dollars,
Yeah,
how much does it affect instruction,
yeah.
practice? Those could be kind of long-term projects, you know, for the board administration, to look at like what rubrics exist, what
Right.
structures exist to sort of get at that.
And some of those are instructional and some are specials.
Right.
You know, that's that other pieces of the puzzle. And age group and need. And then we get reimbursed for some of those specifics. So that factors into it as well. The new, reimbursement model, that's what actually put us in a better position than we were before. You know, in general, you know, let's say district to district. Because our metrics were different in that regard. And a lot of it had to do with the percentage of poverty.
Right. Yeah, that changed too. Yeah. That's the way that's decided.
So that's a whole nother value, you know, in that.
May I ask please one more?
Sure.
And I'll try to keep my hands underneath my knees here. So what about special ed needs? I know we have a tremendous amount of special ed needs in our schools, and not just our elementaries, because I've looked up the numbers in there, in the middle school and the high school. The middle school, I think, has the most of anybody, but then the high school comes right in there. And so how much had to be cut out of special ed needs that we already have such a desperate need for? And we can't even take care of what we have, the needs that are not being met now. We aren't taking care of all those needs now. So how much more is coming out of the budget?
There were some vacant positions in special ed that we reduced.
Okay.
But our caseload is still relatively low. So that's why we thought we could do that. Special ed teachers' caseloads are very low.
So it's not
But that's what we
accurate.
want. Well, that's what we want.
Right, I
pulled the
understand,
numbers to show you.
that's where the question came from, is because of,
With the vacancies, though, it's all over the place.
right,
Some of the reductions are in that area. They do get a block grant now
Right.
instead of a reimbursement formula, which, you know, I spent a lot of years in special ed, 15 as a
Right.
special ed director. I never supported that model because I was afraid you weren't gonna get what you needed for each kid. So if students move in with high needs, you know, you could rest assured you were gonna be reimbursed for what the district had to, you know, put in. With the block grant, it's not that, accurate. You know, the block grant for the number of students you have, so.
All students.
For all students. So, that's new. We haven't really seen the impact of that. I think last year we lost, a chunk of money
This year,
because of the,
there was call it a kerfuffle, with some of the projected numbers. So the numbers that we all based our budget on versus what the actual calculation ended, was less. I think there's some legislation in the works to try and keep people whole for this year. But next year, our block grant, everyone's, for that matter, is going down pretty much. Just special education funding in general, that's just decreasing. I mean, at the end of the year, you know, you still have your, well, for now, you still have your extraordinary reimbursement for over that, 66,000. You know, you get reimbursed, 99% or whatever, and the lesser of, this or this. But special ed funding in general just seems to be a move on the decrease.
There is still a formula for, extraordinary cost. So when a student comes in and they're very expensive, can't remember the threshold now, it's
Like I said, 66.
66. Yeah, it was 50 forever, but it went up to 66,000, but at that threshold, then you get 90% of the cost back from the state. That's one of the problems that the state is blaming, for the increase in cost and the decrease in revenue, because special ed costs around the whole state have really gone through the roof. So,
Are there three different grants that come for special ed? Or is it labeled under special ed? Not seeing it. I think we just did.
The block grant.
I know we've got the block grant, I thought there was two others that,
the block grant extraordinary reimbursement for those over 66, and then
State-based ones, we get somebody for, and I want to say the triple E.
yeah, and then there's a federal IDEA grant.
okay,
Yeah, that was part of the original funding for special education. Originally they would pay, I think, 60% of the costs for states. They've never gotten over 40%, so if it's even that.
I was doing the same.
Well, there's always other pieces, that are part of the layer. Like the budget.
I think that the more that we can give an explanation for, and if I'm having to ask the questions, then I'm thinking the town people, our taxpayers are asking those same questions for themselves, they looking at you and even looking, at the book every year. There's not a clear answer for them. They look at special ed, so they think, okay, well, that's this, and this, and when I think, sorry, Jacob, that if we could break it down more, this is what is included in, and I know we kind of, but even for me, it's a little confusing sometimes, and I have to go back and look it up or call somebody and call Jacob and ask. I think that if it was maybe just a little more clear, a little more detailed, maybe it's the right word I need to be saying, for what is included in that amount.
Well, one of the things we can do.
I know it's more work,
You do the presentation now.
right?
You can get into as much detail as you want, without, without boring people to death, but. That's where you really get into, like, what are the people concerned about, how do you answer that?
Right.
And then, also sort of get questions that sort of bring out whatever you need to know.
I served on VSBA, I went to some of my colleagues and said, would you mind if I don't share, but would you mind sharing with me what your budget looks like? I'm not looking at the numbers, I just want to see how you're presenting it to the public. And that's when I thought, oh my gosh, that's so very clear to me. This is what's included in this amount, because they've spelled it out. They've made it very simple, but spelled it out exactly what was included in salaries and what was included in athletics. I mean, they broke it down, one of them locally, very local to us, broke it down per athletic event. I mean, separation, like football was this and baseball was this. They got very, very specific, and I thought, oh yeah. And they had a really interesting budget, and it passed. And I'm thinking, that's probably my thought, because it was clear to me what they were putting in their budget and why and where it came from. or where it was gonna be going for the next year. And I just thought, oh, wow, I know that has to be a lot of work, but
No, we see,
Oh, it
we
should
have,
have made me
the only
really
way we get to what we have is doing.
I'm sorry.
The only way we get to what we have is doing all that.
Oh, I know,
So, yeah, we have,
But we don't
like, down to the supplies that an individual teacher buys in their
yeah,
room.
exactly, yeah,
Every, you know, how much paper
Right.
we buy, how much copier costs, every single thing.
you know, my
So it's a
question
matter of
is.
how long you want.
I'm just putting it out there because it was just, it made it so much clearer to me, and I'm thinking,
I think,
Joe Public.
well,
Yeah, and if you
I
saw
think
something good, it'd be nice to.
it would be good to
Show
be
us
able to
examples.
see it, you know, so.
Well, I will ask if I can share it
you
with
know,
you, because I
no,
told him I would
it's
share.
public, it's public.
It's all-
information.
I wouldn't mind seeing all that detail as well.
Okay.
Okay, in order to see that, okay, expect triple the size,
Oh, yeah,
okay?
it's
Because
just thick.
if their budget, and if it's who I think it is, our budget's probably 3 times bigger.
Remember the exact numbers, ours is definitely bigger.
So what I'm getting at is if theirs was this, thing, and it's no problem, you know, it's just be ready, you know. because-
Each one of these lines is a category.
Right.
So teacher salaries, where
Right.
you know, all of the buildings and the
Yeah.
programs in the district from, you know, pre-K to the tech center. Every single building would have all its lines, and then they're broken up in those lines,
Right,
you know.
And we have
I realize that.
the breakout of the function and then by objects underneath it, so you know, if you really wanna get into the micro level of, you know, how much salary is at the, you know, tech center, we have that data. Just how micro would you like, and I share.
Truly, I was being very selfish, I just wanted to see what some other school districts were doing, how they were presenting it, trying to figure out, is there a better way that we could present it that's
Yeah, whatever you.
more
whatever you think,
adaptable for the taxpayer?
Well,
Whatever the board wants, really.
we can do whatever we need to do, okay?
Okay,
But you just need to be prepared.
Oh, yeah.
What it's gonna look,
yeah,
because
I
it is a
understand that.
question of volume,
yeah,
okay? Because the district that the lady that sits next to me, hers is twice the size of ours.
right. And I know we were talking about,
And so every one of those, so we're looking at, you know, a 51 million, you know, dollar budget. Theirs is $104 million. They have 1,000 employees to our 430. So every one of those lines,
yeah,
if we look at them as you disaggregate that data, it's pages. You know, but you know, that's what we need to look at.
I mean, even just looking at it by school, even just looking at it, you know, broken out by school would be helpful too.
But the thing is, it can be disaggregated any way we choose. Okay, but just be ready.
that's,
Yeah, I've seen districts do, not just by school, but even every single
By class.
contract, by teacher,
Right.
you know, that gets a little sensitive, but it's public.
Yeah.
Everything we do is public, so.
So there's no hiding. It's just, how much do you want? It's just a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the question, you know.
I remember
Up to us.
one year we had a concerned citizen who asked for contract negotiations, not teacher contracts, but a bus transportation contract. And he asked for all of the detail on the bids, and when I gave it to him, he freaked out. So, yep, that one bid, it was about a ream of paper, 500 pages.
for that.
I didn't want all that. I'm like, that's what you asked for. That's what you got.
Exactly.
So, you know, so that's up to us.
Something to
As
think
far
about.
as, you know, like how far do we want to say? Do it to any degree. This is just. These are big buckets, so as to versus what's in each of those buckets.
But that's, I mean, I'm not a data guy, so. Sounds good.
Good, so we don't have to give it to you in hard copy.
See, that's that other piece. It's like,
We've had budget cuts, we don't want to
If there's money in the case, I can work with that.
you know, and then it is all public information, so it's just. What you to help understand. And then we've done that. Jacob has done that. So we'd like to see this, well. There it is. There's a spreadsheet. Okay. Here comes the Excel spreadsheet.
Good.
So our timeline time. On this,
Do you want to move the budget first and then, because I think that's a whole separate agenda, item, right?
yeah, no, it is.
I mean, I'm happy to answer it too, whatever you want. The big thing with our timeline is, we had to have a budget done, and warned, by April 15th, so, tomorrow I'll file this with the town clerk and, we have to have a hearing on April 6th, but, it's problematic because of they picked this April 15th date. I don't think the legislature cared when April vacation was for Hartford or a lot of other districts. So we either had a hearing on the 6th or the 13th. The 6th is the first day of April vacation, the 13th is the second Saturday of April vacation. Both problematic. The vote is the Monday we get back from April vacation. So, not ideal, but they locked us in.
Kevin? I think I heard yesterday that, they were going, under certain circumstances, you can submit your side of the story, and they would extend it to the 19th. Is that correct? This came out of Ways and Means. Have you heard anything about that?
That was, for a district that was in an extreme situation.
We're in an extreme situation.
No, we haven't voted a budget. No, those are for those ones that got theirs voted down.
Okay,
That, they're the ones, being that we did not present our budget,
right,
and this is the first time,
right.
we're in a different group.
Okay, so what if we present this budget? And these 11 people out here say, eh,
That we go back to the drawing
so
board.
then we go
another
back to the
30
drawing
days
board and
out.
get a different extension.
Another 30 days out. And
Right,
they
okay.
have to go through that whole cycle all over.
That's
Do
what I
the
thought.
same process
Make
all over.
sure.
Yeah, because then board would figure out, like, okay, so if it didn't pass, God forbid, but if it didn't pass, what do you think would pass?
Right,
Give me a goal to work on, and then I would.
So, geez,
I was just concerned about the dates.
Yeah,
Yeah, I knew that we would
30
have to do
days.
that over.
They're 30 days.
Okay.
By statute, you need to have that amount of time, have the warning, have the informational meeting.
Yeah, you have to have a budget in place for the right school year.
That was gonna be, I knew there was one more, I lied, there's gonna be one more.
And the cost of running this.
Right,
Yeah.
cost of the whole.
Yeah, this cycle, it's gonna be
Paid for
reversed
by the state.
by the state,
Yeah.
the next one wouldn't be that.
Ours. Yeah.
That's on you.
Exactly.
Right.
I have a question about that. You please mention the contracts. So if we don't, correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't have a past budget, y'all cannot present a contract to the teachers, is that correct? May I ask her? I'm sorry. You probably know that too. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like the Bible, we both like kind of read it every day.
Yeah.
So we actually don't have any language in our contract for if the budget doesn't pass in the teacher's contract. We do have language for if we are in a negotiation cycle and we haven't finished, so there's two separate portions. So, but there's also, various, language about RIFs, right? So RIFs are generally supposed to happen before April 15th. And there's some discrepancy in how Vermont NEA interprets that and how the district is interpreting that. But in its Title 16, subsection 1752C, and it's basically it says that anybody who is not under a just cause agreement has to be notified by April 15th. However, our vote is April 15th. So Vermont NEA thinks that the district has a responsibility to over-RIF in case the budget doesn't pass, so that educators have an opportunity to know that they are possibly getting cut, so that they have an opportunity to look for jobs. Because, there's a real chance that it, like you said, could take 30 days more if the budget doesn't pass when it's voted on. So, we're still talking about that and what our mutual agreement is about that.
Our attorney, the board's attorney, thinks that if the budget doesn't pass on the 15th, you can still rip.
Right.
So we're
Yeah,
just trying to work that out.
and, we have language about,
It was just in my mind.
our language is about, the annual school town meeting, right? So you're planning to have that when?
April 6th.
April 6th.
15th. Well, the town meeting is the 6th, yeah.
Right, I mean, so we never really had a special town meeting before, so town meeting is generally the first
Right.
Tuesday of March. So the special town meeting, if it's April 6th, we also have language in our contract that says 15 days past or something,
Yeah,
the annual town meeting.
contracts have to be out.
So,
We look at April 15th, the day that people vote, as that day.
That's when you vote, so.
Yeah. That's why I think we all need to work really hard to pass the budget. We don't wanna go there and try to find out. The last time, years ago, we had a budget that failed. And I think it was before Australian ballot. So, we explained to the taxpayers what happened, it was a floor vote in the gym. And we looked at the budget and I don't even think we changed it. We ended up moving the question again at the same amount with a better explanation that. So,
And that was a request from the floor. To leave it as is.
that was like 2013 or so,
Thank you.
so.
Sorry.
No,
Nice.
this,
I think-
this is new territory. We haven't been here.
Yes.
Okay.
I think the better we can do, with our presentation, because this is the beginning. Now we need to, really develop a presentation and make sure we're answering all of your questions, everybody here and whoever's out cyberland to, get at it. But if you want to hear the questions, I think you better move the number, right? Right.
Jacob can make those files available. And we can do that. So, they can take a look.
There, if I can connect with you.
No, it'll just be sound. It's all done. Perfect. It's that simple. It's not like, because it's just
Yeah, they
another file.
exist. Just gotta lock them down, I guess, I could just change the name to lock right out.
So they're PDFs, so,
So I don't edit everything.
or inadvertently go like,
It's
What
not
happens-
personal, Gary.
what happens if I do this, and then all of a sudden, it's like, Where'd those extra people come from, you know?
And it's not where he did that with me and he does that with all the administrators. You're not editing, I'll edit. No,
My number is.
yeah, nobody's talking.
He's going to assess.
Well, as difficult as this cycle has been. I mean, every other day I was getting a note from Jacob, they changed it again. It was like, you know, and that was unheard of. You know, all of the time. So. It has not been fun. So,
I'd like to make a motion. That we accept the budget as presented.
so second.
Second,
So we have a motion and a second. To accept the budget as presented. Which is, to expend 51,042,923. Which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year by Australian ballot. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You know, now the real thing is because, you know, we're gonna take that dive, ask long questions and develop answers for your neighbors when they ask you a question. And that's the next part of this, you know, because that happens. We don't do the presentation like before, or think about it like before. You know, it's usually once we get the hard number, that's when it starts to get. Well,
it's what fun we get.
So, that brings us to the discussion around bond considerations.
The facilities team met Monday, I guess, right? Monday, and we talked a lot about the bond. We talked about it as it is, which is just about $21 million. You know, I discussed with the facilities team that, you know, I've heard a lot of concerns about that number, and the scope of the work, and wanted to, you know, pursue the question of, you know, is there any interest in a reduced bond? Or any consideration like that? We talked about it for a while, and I think, the committee decided, well, Doug, you can talk to it, but the committee decided to, you know, continue with the $22 million bond. You know, so that's where we're at with that. Want to add anything, or
No,
it's just,
we had a discussion, where should we split the bond? And do all the life safety goals, which was, 9 million something, and the 11 million later. And there was the group's consensus to, no, and to save from doing duplication of fix this now, and next year we're gonna do this, and reduce what we've already done. So the committee felt that we should go forward with the bond as it is. Strongly.
No, because I personally have some, but I'll.
I'll stand up and say, obviously, it's a lousy time. But under the circumstances, the issues that we've got, And it doesn't matter whether we like it or not. It's either we get the bond. And then first 9 million, whatever, is there to repair all the life safety codes. Or potentially. We're going to be having long chats with the firemen. And without getting into the issue. Do I want my child in the school if in fact there are all these life safety issues? No, thank you. Is loaded with liability. And so I just, if we explain it as to why and what's involved in it, I can't believe that people won't understand. I mean, it's like when you talk about you paid the parking lot, needed it for years. We did it. What happened? 12 months later, there's a backhoe up there digging it all up. So all the money the school board spent, just excuse my English, fell on the handbag. And we don't want to see that happen time and time again as all these issues arise. And you don't want to come to school one day and find out that half of the heating system's gone because the boiler's gone. And it's old and we can't get parts for it. I mean, I'm not a person who likes to spend money. And if I can keep it and pinch it, I'm quite happy. But under the circumstances, as I look at this list, it's all legitimate. I wouldn't want children or staff to work in a facility that potentially has major structural issues or a whole lock system for the school or all the schools doesn't exist. In today's world, you can't live that way. And so I'll be the first to stand up, and if it takes me 24 hours to sit there and explain to people why we're asking for this, I'm more than willing to do it. Throw tomatoes at me, I don't care. This is reality. This is what, it's gotta be done. And we've spent 2 years putting this list together. I mean, this is not something that we went in and sat down for 35 minutes and came out and said, here we go. 2 years of looking and developing this. So
I think for me, it's, yeah, I've been supportive of the bond. I've been very involved in the work that got to the $21 million. So it's very hard for me to say anything, but I think given the predicament of the budget, I just beg the board to consider, the impact of a $21 million bond on a $51 million budget, and given the predicament we're in, that's what's forward facing with the kids. We just had an hour and a half of discussion about the kids and the impact of the budget. Does the bond and pushing the bond forward, not listening to some of the people that we've heard with concerns, does that have an impact on getting the budget passed for the kids and the staff? And again, I don't want to forego one little thing in that bond, but I also want to make sure I'm being reasonable and realistic. So I just worry, and I've told the building committee that, I've told the board chair. I guess I just gotta say in public, as much as I support it, I want to make sure everyone's considering how those two interplay. 18.5% big lift for the community. That's a lot of money, a lot of thousands on your tax bill. And a $21 million bond is more. And it lasts for a long time. That's a long commitment. So I just hope the board weighed out that, what the impact will be.
No, I know you want.
And I probably said too much.
No, Nancy,
Hopefully I'm not in
you
trouble.
had that look.
I had that look. I can't imagine. I am really, I'm very torn about the bond because I've been for this bond from the start. Because I looked at all the reports, I've gone and looked at some of the places in the buildings that we're talking about that have to be done. I've heard from the state that if you don't get this done, we can come in here and shut your school down. And then what do we do? And then I've been, because I am one of those retired people living on that limited income. I look at those figures and how much that's gonna raise my taxes. And so I have that heartfelt feeling for the ones that it's going to affect so much. But in the same little warped mind that I have, I'm with Doug. I know the stuff has to get done. I know that every year that we put it off, it's gonna cost us more to get that done next year than it's gonna cost us to get it done this year. And I know it's a really high, a real big debt there. And, once again, I look around at the school, I look at the kids, I look at the staff here, and it would break my heart, number one, for the state to come in and say, we gotta close you down because you haven't got this stuff done. We've given you plenty of time to do it. And number two, if something were to happen to a staff member or to one of our students, that because we didn't get something done in good time. So when I weigh those two things, I have to go with the bond, even though it's gonna be a real financial hardship on a lot of people.
But we need to remind me the cost.
Oh, yes, I
It's
understand.
spread over 20
Right,
years, right? So I mean, it's not like what we just passed for.
right. I understand that too.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
is over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that, though. I truly do, yeah.
I think in years past, that argument has been really powerful. I guess my concern right now, as I'm entering my last year here, is we don't know exactly what it's gonna cost. Trying to determine that. And we don't know exactly what it's gonna cost next year. We hardly figure out what next year's budget is gonna cost because of the funding debacle, disaster. So that's just one thing that's a little different than years past. It's, if you have a CLA drop next year, in the funding formula that doesn't get worked out at the state level, where they're giving us clear numbers in a timely way. What's gonna be the impact of the bond on the budget next year when we further pass it? Just something to think about.
I do, I understand that completely.
Yeah, and I'm not trying
Like I
to.
said, I'm really
I'm very
torn.
supportive, so I'm not trying to be negative, I'm doing like it's my responsibility to kind of put that elephant out there.
So I mean, as a taxpayer, I'm not excited for 18.5% increase in taxes, of course, hearing the $21 billion bond. I just see more dollar signs that I've got to pay, every year in taxes, but as a parent, I'm all for the bond. I mean, there's a lot of things on that list that need to be taken care of. And I think both of you said it best, that a lot of those things can't wait much longer. And if we do wait, they're just gonna cost more in the long run. Or, heaven forbid, a school gets shut down because the elevator's not fixed or not up to code. I think it was important to mention all the ADA compliance issues that have changed, that all of a sudden things are not compliant anymore. Those have to be taken care of. Or else we pay money fines.
Well, it isn't fines. They just shut down.
Or shut down. So, yeah, we fix it anyway.
I've seen that happen. Yeah, so I guess there is one more. Go ahead.
If we sit here, pat ourselves on the back, what's happened in the last 2 months? We have a championship hockey team. We have semi-champion
championships.
basketball.
Yeah.
We've got. Where's my little list, because I've got armies.
Track.
We've had two teams for culinary arts go. One got a championship. I don't know what it means, but it says live and local. Anyways, you've got the health course went to a competition. We had two teams. We've had, and I don't, it's the students that do the logging and chainsaws and all that. Yes, thank you. They went to VTC to observe, found a poster encouraging students to sign up as a team. The juniors from Hartford signed themselves up. With no practice whatsoever, they went in there and came in second. I mean, it was a gutsy move on the part of the kids, but these are the kids we have here. And we have to support them. We can't, you know, they don't deserve to come to school in a less than desirable environment. I just can't say enough.
As you know, there's two ways to approach every, you know. And
Every,
you know, like how to eat an elephant, you know, one bite at a time. But that being said, the life safety code issues are the life safety code issues, and we know what they are. The other issues are needs that need to be addressed. Every school that, you know, for history has addressed their budgets and their needs with those types of things in mind. If you ask a school teacher or administrator that's been in this work for a while, there's been times when you get asked either by your principal or by your superintendent, by your board, depending on where you are in the list. What would you like to see done in your area? And you put together the same list that we did as a district. Here's the comprehensive list of where we are. Invariably, you get into situations like we're in right now, where people say, this is just too difficult right now at this moment. And you have to come up with a plan. And usually that plan is, what is the most critical needs in that list? And how can we address those? Because those are the ones that will close the door. Or those are the ones that will affect the safety, you know, of everybody. Of students, kids, and the public, like into that building. And these other ones, we clearly need to know, because I mean, we don't know what those roofs are gonna cost. We still have to do that study for the roofs, right? We have to get a commission to put out an RFP out, you know, and get that done. Those are things, you know, that's in that mission critical, you know, list. The 21 million isn't fixing, it's coming up with the plan for how to. Okay, and that's what is there. And so as I'm looking at it, I'm going, what's reasonable to approach our public with the fact that we're approaching them with a $355 increase in their tax bill. Just with day-to-day operations. If we can reduce that number, that $21 million number, at least for today, and still take care of all of those life safety things, what does that look like? Is it half of that? And it does what we needed to do as far as keeping the doors open, keeping the buildings safe, addressing, the gym issues, addressing the auditorium issues, because those are capacity issues, okay, in their life safety. And those have a direct effect on our students. If we can do all of those things and still do the two studies, the engineering report for the two roofs and the study of the district capacity and needs as far as with the 365 or so.
Yeah, 339.
Okay, so with 390 units coming online, that has to be projected too, and that's part of the number. That's part of the 20. But if we can take care of that, the facility roof component piece, and then all of the life safety things, and we can come up with a number that's half what we're talking about, and ensure that all of those safety issues are addressed, fully. This, as we all have seen and heard, as at those meetings, people are stretched. And I think, we need to look at all of the options, and that right now, for me, is another option. At least just food for thought, so throwing it out there, I'm not, asking anybody to fit in, but it's another consideration.
It's 300,
I made that
360.
consideration in our last meeting. And my colleagues turned it down. They wanted, I said, let's do the life safety code, which is 8 or 9 million. And we'll do the rest of the time later. And my colleagues didn't want that. They literally felt with everything they've worked on, and they knew they felt we should go forward.
So here's the reality. At the end of the day, it's our responsibility. And at the end of the day, we're the ones that are gonna have to stand in front of everybody here, everybody out there, and say, in our best estimation, in order to keep our kids safe and our staff safe, this is our recommendation. Internally, if we knew that something was gonna change, in that variable, because there are some things that could, change. I think I would lean more towards, the whole thing, knowing that we'd be reimbursed for part of it. Okay, but that hasn't passed yet. Okay, because finally, the discussion around school construction is back on the table. Okay, it's on the table. And it's on the table so strongly that it's highly probable that we'll be seeing something. But I still, think as far as our responsibility to the taxpayers and not, to be disrespectful at all to our committee that did that life work to put this piece together. But at the end of the day, we're the ones that are gonna have to stand up and defend, clearly, our position as for, I think, Doug kind of said, if I make an ask right now, to folks and say, here's your work on it. Tell us what you do. That's one thing. What can you do immediately is another question. Now, I think Doug got to that, even though the rest of the group, you know, I think you weren't totally, right? There was one person who did, and
They all, right?
Yeah, we discussed it thoroughly. Um, I'm still concerned because I think what I want and then, you know, what I need are two different things. And I just worry, I think primarily, most important, we want the budget to pass. And I don't know how much the taxpayers, how much the bond weighs in on that, but it's an awfully big ask when we're having trouble explaining the budget. And then we're asking for another 21 million, which we don't know the impact in year 2, 3, 4, 5, because of all the funding problems. So, you know,
That's true.
just to be prepared today, I did look at the bond and had Jacob and Jonathan look at it. It's like, what must we do? What do you think has the potential of locking the doors or reducing, you know, capacity? Because I think that's probably what'll happen first. Again, I'm not, the fire marshal and the fire department's gonna do what they're gonna do. They wanna keep our kids and staff safe. So I can't predict what they're gonna do, but I think generally it's capacities and, you know, reducing our access to certain things, not necessarily padlocking the door, but I mean, through that lens, what do we have to do? It's, you know, just shy of $6 million to get us, you know, the life safety stuff, the security stuff for the safety of our students, and staff, and the two studies, because I really feel like we need the studies, because we have 360 units, 100 which are already ready to go online in the fall, and then another 260 that are in the permitting process. So, you know, I'm super concerned about that. So, you know, I'm stuck between, you know, what we want to do and sort of that wish list of like, this is what we need to do long term to get ahead of it, but then what's going to pass, what's going to be okay with the voters, and what's not going to impact the budget.
The list in front of me, but once we get beyond the life safety codes, is the issue of the elevator in the middle school. It's so old, we can't get parking for it.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's not quite wind up, but it's close.
right. Boiler is, I mean, if it goes, it goes, and we can't repair it. I mean, the lid, that sort of list.
But the reality, Doug, and I'm gonna get to this, because I've been watching this work, you know, too, and I can tell you, there are reserves available for those two emergency issues, okay? That is a fact. Okay, and not to the, you know, I mean, but those are also in that life safety, you know, too.
No, that's beyond the life safety.
Well, the thing is, an elevator, you know, in a building that has that need, you know, with ADA, as you know, stated, you know, that becomes a different factor, you know, because it isn't a convenience, you know.
Right.
You know, we have students that have needs, we have faculty that have needs. I put that in that category. Yeah, you know.
Have a horrible time.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
You know, and
I
so,
rode on it the other day, just for kicks.
but I think that, you know, those are the,
I was worried I
you know, those critical, you know, need things, you know, there's a difference still between, you know, those and some of the other items, you know, that are on people, that's as far as at least moving a discussion forward with the community, you know, that shows that we're trying to take into account every possibility, you know, and security, you know, life safety, you know, those, you know, are mission critical. Well,
Which items on the list, if not fixed, could then lead to more damage than a higher cost in the long run? I mean, I think those things should be lumped into things that should be addressed immediately as well.
well, see, remember, there's pieces that could be decided to be added into the budget, my understanding. You know, as well, some of those things could be scheduled. And that's a piece that, you know, we could, you know, work with, because that's part of the job, you know, that we have to do, at least now, until we, you know, like, figure what we're gonna do after, because we still need to have that study, you know, the engineering study. So those are the two groups, those are the, you know, and those are really critical pieces, you know, on the next step. You know, that boiler, you know, is in that group. You know, the elevator for me personally would be more leaning towards a life-saving piece. You know, we just replaced one at the State House that is the same vintage as the one in the middle school. And we ended up replacing it because the same reason we couldn't get parts in. You know, every 4 or 5 days, that thing would not work. And supposedly, you know, like I said, the sergeant of arms, the people's house, well, these buildings are kids' house. So we need to make sure.
And one of the things that Jonathan and I were working through when we were kind of putting the list together for the essential stuff is depending on kind of the feedback we get from the one study about, you know, how we best use our schools. That's may determine some of the kind of bigger issue stuff about, like, the one that comes to mind that Jonathan and I talked about was like kind of the heating source at the middle school, depending on, you know, what the study or whatever says. For the best use of the school is going to determine what we replace or fix that with. So it's kind of just making kind of the best financial decisions we can before we have all the data that we need.
See, trying to avoid those things where we only have enough money to do this. We don't look, well, what if in 2 years we use the building for something a little bit different? Or, you know, what if we you know, change the program?
So to not get super technical in any of the things, just think about what Jacob just said in the sense of application. We might go wood fire. Wood fire doesn't use the same chimney design as oil. You know, you might do a variable of that, go partial solar and back up, you know, wood chip. There's any number of different approaches that we might take depending on the need. And each one of those is factored in, because you do get reimbursement for any, you know, environmentally, you know, appropriate applications. So, you know, that's that next generation piece, but the study would inform us for that. You know, because let's say, if we say, instead of having 3, you know, pre-K through 5 elementary schools, we went up, they recommend we go 1 more grade higher. And the middle school configuration changes. Just 2 years, or you know, whatever comes, you know, out of that, it could shift that volume, you know, especially if the numbers are also.
So,
But
may I,
no,
just a quick question. I just want to make sure what I'm hearing is what you said. So if we went with an alternative plan that would cover the roofs, the life safety, the 2 planned studies, not counting the boiler and the elevator, it would be about 6,000.
6 million,
I mean, 6 million.
yeah. It wouldn't be,
Yeah, I have a million down here.
it wouldn't be the whole,
Was 699.
it wouldn't be the whole, it wouldn't be the roof, the replacement of the roof at Queechee and Dalton, it would be the study of like.
The
Which is about,
study of the
the
roof.
study of the roof is about $15,000.
But
Trying
we
to
do the
figure
life safety.
It isn't, let's call it what it isn't, it's an engineering. You know, design, so, you know, because you need to pre-design it, you know, the new work, because that's what happened after the roofs failed, right, and they were first constructed, and that was identified in that letter. You know, the change.
What would
So I
we
could run
add
through,
that?
do you wanna know?
I was just gonna ask, what, with those things, what would it be if we add the boiler and the elevator in there?
What about the structural issues as well, like all the foundation work?
I mean, that's why you talk about this.
Yeah, I know
Oh, yeah.
it's something.
It's, giving the
It's like
mouse,
that.
you know, giving the moose a muffin.
We have young children going to Queechee and Daltonbrook, leaky roofs. Personally saw it myself, water literally pouring out of the ceiling. Our kids are there. Shall we have a discussion about mold?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But that 21 million isn't gonna affect that at all. We're not fixing, you know, even the 21 million will not fix the two roofs. Right?
It would just be the engineering
Okay,
design.
you know, think about that, you know, go back to your notes, the 21 million will not fix, or does it? Did it?
Yeah, I thought it was getting at that, yeah.
But that included the study and the repair.
The study, and depending on what those here is.
Right.
So
So I
that's the
mean,
problem, you know, predicting it so far out. Because if we reach $3 million, no.
We're gonna
We
do the
think
study
the
groups
roofs
around this and then repairs.
but
But again,
that's the option.
the idea of a smaller bond is not to forego within $21 million. It's just to buy us time while we figure out the funding formula and the impact on the taxpayers. Because of the funding formula in a year or two. You know, if we did a smaller bond, we have money in the reserve account to pay the bond payment for the next 3 years. Which has got to get us to a place where there's more, say, security, you know, assurance about what the revenue picture is gonna be for the state. So that's the piece I'm worried about. It's not foregoing what's in the point where the bond, we need it all.
Yeah.
It's doing what absolutely must have to be done immediately because of this whole funding disaster. Not, and you know, it's not ideal. I don't even like saying that to all of you. But I only say that because my responsibility, you know, fiduciarily to the people. What's it gonna cost next year? We've had that question a million times. You know, what's it gonna cost next year? I can tell you what I think it's gonna cost, you know, based on this year's funding, what they've told us, next year.
Because it's
So,
on
So when we have the CLA drops, we're gonna be in a much harder situation next budget season. If we have to add 1.8, probably 1.4 locally, because we'll have principal next year.
Right.
That it's, you know, potentially, we're gonna be cutting this to cover the bond. It's a hard situation.
Does everybody, I mean, I wanna make sure we're being clear with those numbers, but in the first year of the bond, we pay just the interest. Right. In the second year of the bond, we pay the interest of the principal. So next year, next year's budget, FY 26, we'll be looking at that much larger payment. And any other increases that are in the budget, we're locked into it. And we don't know what the funding formula is gonna be. God forbid that like it drops like it did this year, the CLA. We hope that doesn't happen. We've been assuming, hoping that, told that the appraisal will get done. But, that's a lot of work. There aren't a lot of appraisers, it's a lot of work. I don't know how reasonable, or realistic that is, that that's gonna get done. Others might know better, but I don't know.
But I guess it's a, you know, it's the pleasure of the board, you know, at this point. Like, you know, what we do. If choose to go forward, you know, it's a full number, that's so we. If we try to look at one of the alternative options. Either. But that's something we need to decide.
And what happens if the bond gets voted down? If you go back to the drawing board, all over again?
Yeah, and you can propose a bond pretty much anytime, but I understand. There's a cost to an election, though it's most efficient if you do it when there's already an election, so like the November national election, that would be cheaper, right? Because everything's set up, ballots are being done. You could wait till next spring, you know, this time of the year.
And over time, you know, sometimes it's taken, you know, several attempts to get to, let's say, the end. Question, you know, becomes. How do we, because. What would end up happening is if we didn't. Do either of the two. We're gonna have to find those funds somewhere. Finding those funds somewhere, we sit here again and ask Tom or whoever, you know, then at that point, he say, you need to find us $6 million, because if we don't find that $6 million, something's gonna happen, you know. Some of those consequences that we're talking.
One of the things I've been looking at is the data from the other districts, their budgets, and I know Nancy shared, so thank you, state organizations, is what other districts have, you know, tried to pass their budget and a bond. I don't think anyone's passed a bond. In the budget.
Have decided not to do the bond.
Yeah.
Because of the,
Yeah, Sharon decided not to go off, right?
yeah, several.
Scott's budget passed, but the bond, they,
Right,
I don't know, I think Stowe up there, they had a bond for a new school, and both the budget and the bond, they.
You know, I think those are all factors. You know, the consideration for the life safety pieces, you know, and that's what, you know, I think it's that personally. You know, I think that's probably why Doug made that suggestion, you know, to the facilities. You know, last one. What if we did it this way to get those things taken care of? Would it be more palatable to our constituents? District have what was the 21 that they think would like as far as the cost?
The interest,
Is it passed as is?
the interest for FY 25 would be about 715,000, to be funded by the reserve funds. And then next year's cost with the principal would be about 1.8 million. which we would use the remaining reserve funds for, which would be about 400,000. So you're talking basically about 1.4 million added to the general fund budget for next year.
So that's half of what we took out of the budget this year to, just get to the point where we are at 18%. So, taking all of that into account, we have to look at the viability, of passage to potential, because all of this is it's not an easy time. But we do have to make a decision.
So what makes us think that our taxes will be less next year? Or is that just the pie in the sky hope?
No, they're gonna drop, because they always do. No, I mean, that's a fact.
Okay.
That's
yeah,
not a dream, that's not pie in the sky, that's what happens. It's as weird as that seems, that's what happens. How much, I can't say. But I do know the yield numbers are being worked on now, but we don't have data because of the budgets that didn't pass and the ones that haven't been voted on. And those two numbers are necessary in order to fix the yield. If anything, the hope is that the remaining districts get their budgets approved, or at least 80% of them. 80% would be a working enough number for the Ways and Means Committee to fix the next set of yields. But we need 80%.
Yeah.
We're only at 40% right now of the data necessary to do that.
Yeah, I heard
It
folks
seems,
talk about that too.
doesn't it seem crazy though, and every year we go through painstaking detail to figure out what the budget or a bond is gonna cost the taxpayers. And it moves, keeps moving.
Oh, yeah.
It keeps moving through April. And it's like amazing. When people get down in the nitty gritty pennies, cents, but we're like, it changes every year.
And see, the other hand, because of this perfect storm, the other discussion that can't get kicked down the road anymore, the school construction. And even the governor talked about that. Okay, so now you've got finally the two education committees, both the Senate and the House Ed, and both the Senate and House Ways and Means going. We cannot leave this building without answers to the yields and school construction. Those are two things that are on the table right now, and one of which hasn't been undertaken for the last 12 years. That's why we are where we are with a lot of these things on that list, because normally they would be paid through reimbursement through school construction.
That was gonna be my question is, if we were to get the $21 million bond pass, and then, there was some magic happening in Montpelier, and construction was gonna be covered to some degree, could we get reimbursed?
Well, that would be the plan, and that's why they're asking the question to those boards that failed, with their construction. And my personal feeling is the districts that did due diligence shouldn't be penalized for doing diligence. And not to say shame on the folks who didn't take care of their buildings, but there's a part of me that goes like, and that's not cool. That's what, folks that like us who do. Our buildings are in better shape. Because it's the same buildings that are being requested to be constructed the wood side of the school. It was built the same year ours was. This building we're sitting in is the same age. So there's something to be said, you know, is it perfect? No, we want it to be better. But, you know, those are the other factors. So whatever we decide, what we decide, work together to try to get it. That's what the purpose. Well, welcome to the, you know, Karen's going like, you know, Karen's like, holy crap, you know, what you said anything about this.
We forget to bring it up, I just feel like it's, you know, my responsibility to, you know, the lay of the land is best I can predict, but I support the bond the way it is, I support a reduced bond if the board thinks that's prudent at this time. No bond, if you think that, I mean, that would be horrible, but
I mean, looking at all the needs, there's nothing extravagant on there. I mean, we're not looking to do anything crazy. I'm all for the bond as is.
that's the way it's warned in the document, so you could craft a motion from the number 2. Which is, you know, already sort of done, but we rescinded it all.
See, for the motion, right? It's a good one. All right, so I guess I'd like to make a motion to proceed with the bonds of $21 million.
21, right?
20,817,875.
20,875,000.
Yeah. So 817,875. It's like page 5. It's 20,817,875.
Gotcha. All right, so I'd like to make a motion to proceed with the bond of $817,875.
Second,
So we have a motion and a second to accept the $20 million+ bond, you know, as presented. Any further discussion?
Fine, yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? One. And one absent. No, it passes. And I'll give it my 120% support, because that's the direction the board decided to go. But I voted yea. Yeah. So that brings us to presentation.
Which I think you already decided.
Right.
Every year, a couple board members sort of volunteer to do presentations on whatever topics. So you sort of become like an expert in that area. And I think this year we've already heard that Kevin and Peter want to do the budget. Is that what we want?
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously they'll want Jacob to back up. The number guy, and then the bond, I don't know what you decide for that, is it Sarah and Jonathan? Sarah's gonna be appointed later to the facilities committee, or the board's gonna
And,
consider whether you want to appoint her.
and, you know, that is a question, and then page for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got that listed, so we've got some work to do on that, especially with the new board member.
So,
I think you're good on that, unless
yeah,
you want something different for those presentations.
no, not at all. So, next, school district. Oh, that note from the clerk, the town clerk, about the charter. What was the status? You know, because she was talking about the 10-day.
And I don't think it had any impact on us, I don't know if I,
No,
it's good.
felt that was.
Oh, yeah, the 10 day, she's supposed to have it up to the legislature,
No, the secretary.
Secretary of State. Well, we haven't voted on it yet. So how does she, and that was the
Well,
question.
And that was what she posed to the
Yes,
Secretary
you're right.
of State,
Yeah.
you know, just so people know,
Since the town voted,
you know, because it's a timing issue. You know, normally charter changes, once voted on, need to be submitted to the Secretary of State within 10 days of the vote.
thank you.
And as Tom said, thanks,
Thanks,
Jay.
Jay.
Thank you, Jacob.
You know, and as we know, ours portion of it wasn't voted. And the question becomes, what is the Secretary of State's position on the duties to the charter from us, since we rescinded ours? So that's just a piece to it. Another.
So she said that she would look into it and get back to us, but obviously we can't meet the 10 days. The town voted on last Tuesday,
Right.
we're not voting until
Right.
15,
Right.
so. That should be, and I'm sure that there must be some others, maybe there aren't that many charter changes, but something has to be done there. Yeah, so the warnings, for everyone, these are the painstaking details goes into these 4 pages. And so there's a warning, the first warning is for the special, Hartford School District meeting. And it just describes, you know, when the ballot will be put to the people, April 15th. Discusses, you know, that the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The budget amount is there, 51,043,923, and then the second item is the bond. That hasn't changed from the rescinded budget. Sure, we will write one. So that's the same, and then what I did fix was number 3, which is the standalone piece on the local option tax that in the original warning, I had messed up and incorporated with all the other charter changes. This time I got it right, made sure the attorney checked it, that I was right, so 3 standalone, the local option tax can pass or fail. And then all the charter changes are invited for. So that's one. And then the second one is for, the actual meeting, but a discussion and public informational meeting, like we did a couple Saturdays ago. So, now it's gonna be for the budget, you know, budget presentation, and the bond presentation. And you have to do that within 10 days of the vote, that's why it had to be the 6th or the 13th. I thought the 13th would be much worse, people will probably be away, it's not a good look. The only thing I can say for people who are, maybe are gonna be away on the 6th, is we'll make sure we do plenty of presentations on the budget and the bond before the 6th. So between now and the 6th, we get to do it a couple times. The 6th is the official, within the time frame of 10 days. So again, it has basically, it's the same articles, and it's informing the voters about the budget, 51 million, informing them about the bond, talking about, we'll have to actually go through the charter changes, the local option tax, and then each of the changes in the charter. So that'll be a little different because we're not with, now, we'll have to do that ourselves. We'll actually ask someone from the charter committee to come and explain those. But people will vote on those again. That's the way that works. A little awkward in democracy to have 2 votes. You have 2 votes on charter changes. One for the school, one for the town. And the results are merged. So I have to actually not merge, but I have to pass in each municipality to take it back. So any questions about those? They only took me about 3 days. And 6 back and forth, because it has to be perfect, so.
Would you, sure, some doctors.
Yeah,
So the whole board has a chance.
yeah, so, yeah, what I officially need is you to, do a motion to approve these, and all of you I have signed tonight, and then I'll get Peter to sign it. Through electronically, or you can stop by, maybe, it's up to him.
So we need a motion for the warning approval and citing.
It doesn't have to be fancy, basically.
So basically that sentence.
The warning for the town meeting and the election. As proposed.
The one for the special Hartford School District meeting.
But yeah. Yes,
So I make a motion that, we approve that, April the 15th of 2024 at the Hartford High School Gymnasium will be the budget discussion and public informational hearing. This meeting will be conducted in compliance with the Vermont Open Meeting Law.
That's April 6th, though.
Oh,
What did I say?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
actually, you don't have to get to that detail.
Oh,
If you go back to the agenda,
yes,
flip to the agenda,
yeah,
on page of the agenda, next to the last line. Make a motion that the school board, adopt the annual budget and the bond charter
gotcha.
warning approval and sign. And that'll take care of everything.
Okay, gotcha. I make a motion that the school board approve the school district annual budget, bond, charter warning approval and signing board committee. And that's all. Sorry.
Second,
Can I make a suggestion?
Do it, give me the date.
No, I would say you look at the title of those 2 warnings.
So you need the
I think Kevin
warning
said-
approved.
The warning for the special Hartford School District meeting and the warning for the budget discussion and public informational hearing. And that'll make sure we're absolutely clean and proper with it.
Okay, so we're just gonna use
Just the titles of those 2
Just the
documents.
title. Okay.
Yeah,
New motion.
sorry.
That's okay. I make a motion that, the board accept the warning for special Hartford School District Meeting 2024, they held on April 6th.
No, we don't have to get,
Don't even have to do that.
just the header.
And also, the warning for the Hartford School District budget discussion, public informational hearing, 2024.
Perfect.
Right, that's it. There's a second.
Second.
There's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Thank you. Okay, well, we can do it after the, really.
With that,
We get some time.
No, we can stop that.
All right.
Well, that'll keep the open meeting. Forever.
Yep.
Whoever they are. Okay, board committee assignments. And right,
Greg, put that up so you can everyone see. There it is.
so I would like to, I'll start because I would like to stay with, obviously with DSBA. And I would also like to stay with the Hartford Community Coalition. And, Pat and Sarah both asked me if I would come on as the second member of our board. And I said I would, if the board voted yes for that. And so we can take turns with select board, whoever was the time to either go to their meetings or listen to it. I'll listen to the one. For Tuesday night. But you know, what else do you do at 3 in the morning?
You and me can talk.
Yeah.
so.
Pleasure the board wants me, but that's where I would like to work.
That works. And
Sorry, Nancy, what was your third one you said?
Corey,
Thank you.
to come as the school board rep,
the second.
the second member, yeah, because Sarah's gonna be the. Well, Sarah's gonna be now the,
Well, actually, you're gonna be there.
yeah, I'll be the first now, yeah, because Sarah is now going on as community member.
See, and until we change the bylaw, we're gonna need a second,
There you go.
you know? So that's an open.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. Because we'll need it first.
All right.
So I need to join the community outreach. phase.
Right.
Yeah, good job, ready. Hopefully, I was like taking a leap of faith that the rest of the board would be okay with that.
Would you consider, H court?
I'd say not at this time, just because I want to make sure I have enough time.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, you're supposed to have two, right?
Yeah.
Full board members?
Yeah. You know, until they'd like to reduce both boards, both the select board and the school board to one primary. Because of the problems they've had getting a quorum. You know, for meetings in general, because the select board meets and we meet. And that usually gets everybody all mixed up, you know.
And if Corey meets all this too.
Right. So that's that other piece. Well, at least for now. Let's go to the other pieces. So Doug, you're gonna stay with facilities? Which is the facilities?
Yes,
and HACTC
Yes.
and community outreach with Garrett.
Let's do it. So let's do it.
And I know Peter is good with the ones he's been doing, and I'm okay with where the ones I'm doing, so it looks like, yeah, we've got it covered, yeah.
Garrett, what they usually do is try to cover the select board meetings. In all, in part or total, it's a lot of time. So that's why it says shared. Right. As much as somebody can get there, it's nice to know what's going on, or sometimes they wanna know what's going on the school board side.
With zooming in now.
Yep.
Yeah. Technology is.
Yeah, and Sarah Campbell did indicate an interest to me to stay on the district facility plan committee as a community rep. So I want you to consider that. She also asked to be appointed to each quarter. I know the select board did that. At their last meeting, either last night or tonight. Cause I just got an email from the town manager, but they appointed her to H Court for March 12th to March 12th, 2024 to March 11th, 2025. They got very detailed form.
So we can do likewise and add it to our list, and we take the motion to pass, our list. That will take care of the motions necessary to add Sarah to the facilities committee as a public rep on our behalf. Then also be the public rep on H Corey. Well.
So
Yeah.
So we have a second.
Second.
But we have a motion and a second to accept board committee assignments and placement of community members on respective committees. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. So that brings us to public comments.
Where do you want me to go?
Yeah, well, no one stood up, so I think it's
Fine.
fine.
Yeah.
No, I think it's fine there tonight, as long as you speak loud enough so these things can hear you.
Teachables. So I'm Nicole Bailu. I think I haven't, Garrett, I haven't met you yet, but
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too. I'm the current HEA president. I've worked in Hartford for 17 years. Went to Hartford. I was a tuition kid. I was one of those free money kids, right? We want those kids because we don't count their money in the budget. So I have a couple of questions. First, I want to start with a comment. And Mr. Merrill made a comment that he really likes having people come and make, comments and be involved. And one of the barriers to public comment is that it never happens at the posted time. And it's just really hard sometimes to sit for 2.5 hours. I mean, like I had to pee. I don't know how Mrs. Tori's doing back there. So I don't know if this has ever been discussed, but possibly either could we, is there a possibility to move it at the beginning or to pause at the posted time? And, so that people can kind of count on when it's gonna be. So whenever I have something to say, I always have to come at the beginning, because I know it's never gonna be, but it's just really hard. But back to the topics that we've discussed. So we represent the majority of our teachers, and even the teachers who aren't members, we represent them most of the time too. If there's, a concern or an issue, because it often impacts all of us.
So the AGA has not, like, we just want to say we haven't been consulted really. And we've always said we want to be a part of the conversation. And Tom and I talk a lot and I say to him, it's easier for me to sell it if I can understand it. And when I understand the reasons and the things that go into the decisions, it's easier than trying to sell something that came through a game of telephone. So, you know, because Tom talks to the admins talk to somebody else, and then we hear from who knows, right? So the message has already been filtered down a little bit. So when a lot of the budget plans were being made, no one asked the people who make up over 80% of your budget. There's a small portion of people, one section, your admins, which, I mean, yes, it's their job, but teachers are pretty creative, you know, like we're like MacGyver. We can make yeah, that's really aging myself.
Yes, we are.
So, you know, we make things work all the time. I mean, you know, COVID, sure, we'll teach on computer. Like, we have a lot of creative ideas and, you know, outside the box. And I know you don't want everybody at the table because that would just be chaos. But at the very least, please consider thinking about inviting, you know, some leadership people. You know, we have some, I can, you know, name a few really good mathematical members of our association who, you know, often negotiate for us because their math minds just go crazy. And also, if we've had a portion or a stake in helping you to create the budget that impacts all of us, it's easy, we're willing to help you sell it. But we have to understand that we have to know that everything has been done to really make sure the cuts are happening where we can tolerate them. So when I hear that, so, you know, I'm looking at the RIF positions, right? So my job is to make sure the contract is followed. The RIF positions, so 13, well, however many of them, 6 of them involve people, right? So we have some attrition happening. We have, retirements, and we'll have people who leave and, you know, things like that. And we have sort of survived without those positions this year, but really it's a basic level of survival. And there are days sometimes where I think teachers don't know that they're gonna survive because it's like pandemonium. And I think when you ask about why it's pandemonium because of the behavior. And what's that like? Lack of staff to handle the behavior, right? And the behavior is getting worse and worse and worse. And even if we're putting mental health clinicians in the schools, there's still behavior that's out of control. You know, we had this week, I'm a teacher at Dothenbrook. We've had paraeducators punch principals, violently assaulted. And, you know, there are plans being made, but all of that is draining and it's really hard to say, we're gonna now give you less staff to deal with this, right? So Nancy asked a question, and I want to go back to Nancy's question. Nancy asked, how much was being cut in administration? And Tom, you responded with that cuts were made across the board. So, and I think you said like with boots on the ground people, right? People who don't impact children. But those aren't administrators. Those are people who maybe don't have direct, like daily, they're not in a classroom or they're not, you know, daily. But am I right in reading this that the proposed budget includes an increase of 135,000 for an administration budget?
Sure, that's what it says. There are some increases.
I'm on the skinnier lines.
Yeah. Well,
So-
that's administrators, you know, salary. So, yeah. There are some administrative increases. We have a new dean of students this year that we added this year at middle school. So that shows up as an increase here. But that was added mid-year.
Right. So I think from the AGA perspective, we have 3 administrators in that building. We have 1 administrator at each elementary school. I think we have 3 at the high school. Maybe
Yep.
4,
3.
3. I don't see any cuts made across that board. You know what I mean? And that's not proportional. And the other thing that I kind of like, it makes sense, but it's almost too simple, is that when you were talking about asking where to cut, that you did it by a per pupil kind of allocation, and that's a super simple way to do it, but perhaps there are budgets in our district that already are overspending. You know, and, you know, maybe a building is spending way more than another building. And the class size, the equity issue that we've been talking about with, you know, elementary class sizes, we've been talking about since 2017, 2018. We have notes going back to 2021, but I have spreadsheets in my Google Drive going back to 2017 because we knew they weren't equitable. And you know, there are some differences in elementary schools, right? But White River schools, I think, have the smallest class, like, square footage. But Ottaquiche and Dothanbrook have the exact same classrooms. It's literally almost the same building, just going in a different way. And our class sizes aren't equitable either between those. So there's a lot of like inefficiency, I feel like, in the budget. And then it looks like there are cuts in things that directly impact students like athletics. And, you know, the things that Mr. Heaviside mentioned, like they're the things getting us our good press right now, or good PR. And they're actually the things that are keeping some of our kids in school and keeping them from using drugs and alcohol that the Hartford Community Coalition was talking about, because they have, you know, pacts and, you know, there's expectations for athletes. And, as a parent of an athlete, I can say that these 2 weeks, 3 weeks between seasons, I literally want to donate my child. I was like, you need some exercise, go. So, and I think we've increased the number of people in other places where, like, what are these people doing? There's a new work processing administrator that's, you know, Jonathan's assistant. There's more and more people in central office. But meanwhile, there are people who have jobs like our elementary secretaries who are literally drowning. I covered for our secretary today for an hour and a half, because she had to leave early. And I was like, this job gives you ADHD. Like, I have the phone ringing, somebody's dinging the doorbell. And so, like, there are people who have more work than they can do. And then there are people who don't seem to. So there's just so much inefficiency. And I'm worried about the 18.5% increase. And do we have a plan, if it fails, that we're gonna drop on April 16th? What's the backup plan? Because 30 days out seems not possible. So I'm trying to think that I talk a lot, sorry, and then I ramble. I think that's it. The only other thing I wondered about was, we have, I don't know, 2 pages of unfilled positions right now. Does any of the money we saved from not filling those positions, can that be used to offset cutting positions next year? Because we had that money in the budget and we don't have people in them.
Yeah, and that money is usually calculated, when the auditors come, like what's left over. And then the board always decides, you know, what, you know, this year we had, can't remember the exact amount. But the majority of that money this year was spent on repairs that needed to get done. So yes, it can be spent, but it's usually like a year in arrears, so to speak.
Okay,
because we
so
don't know-
this year's money was
Yeah.
from last year's
And
surplus?
Yeah, this year's money could be spent next year.
So
So
this
it's sort of
year's-
like hard to know what that is until everything gets settled, because there's things that are overspent, there's things that are underspent. But yes, it definitely will be an amount, for sure,
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of
Yeah.
positions not
Yeah.
filled.
yeah. And there's always, like, from people who left to people who were hired, there's always a discrepancy.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, the
the
18.5%
different healthcare.
is scary, but operating with less adults in a building is also scary.
Yes.
Since you brought something up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have staff meeting?
Oh,
with your
yes.
Principal?
Oh, yes.
Routine.
Yep, first and third Tuesdays of the month.
And during this process, the budget was never brought up, asking you for input.
Nope.
From none of you.
No. In fact, I've asked, I'm a badgerer a little bit. I
No.
say, so, hey,
That's what I call it, I get.
I always say I always walk by Mr. D, my principal, and I always say, hey, got any info? Like, what's getting cut? How much is getting cut? And I don't think they're allowed to say. Or they
No, not-
feel like they're not
Yeah,
allowed. to
Not
say.
yet, I mean, to be honest, not yet, because we don't know what the board was gonna do. So after this, my plan is to talk to you about more
Right.
specifically what they are.
My concerns are on the upside.
Yeah.
Which is where you consulted as we started the process. And asked for concerns,
Yeah.
questions, suggestions. I just want to make sure that you as an employee
Yeah.
have had an opportunity to participate from the level where you are into what we ultimately, in the end, get.
No. We're really at the mercy of our principals and really, I mean, in that regard. And what their opinions are of what should be cut. And, you know, each of them is their own person.
Right.
And they all have their own projects, you know. Just like I have my own things I would never cut and things I would always fund. But we have zero voice in that.
It's the same at the middle
It's-
school.
It's difficult for them. Because they have to filter. There are 20 of you,
Yeah,
they've got to take all your responses.
yeah.
Come down, put their own thoughts into it, and to come up with suggestions.
Absolutely.
And as long as you know that, the ultimate goal is you've had input. You may not like it,
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
myself, but for the board, we just want to make sure that you have an opportunity.
But we have not.
We have not.
Good to know.
I'm here for Megan. It's
You
nothing.
can sit if you want, you can stand if you want.
You can pace back and forth.
Liz Satterley. I teach at the White River School. I have one more student in the high school, and I am a Hartford homeowner, so this all affects me. I realize that tonight is really about the money, and what I have to say, it's wrapped around that. I would like to say it starts. If most of us, I think, who are still sitting here are your employees. We appreciate when you say we worked hard for this. We work hard every day. Everything you do affects everything we do. And speaking for myself, some of you may agree, sometimes I feel like that's not appreciated as much. That you're saying, well, we have 12 professional staff we're gonna cut, 10 support staff we're gonna cut, but really it's just 3 professional and just 3 support staff. Right now, if you averaged out those 22 positions, including the ones that are unfilled, it's, I'm sorry, if you average out the 22 minus 6, then it's 2 to 3 staff members per building on average that we are already not operating with. At our school, it's an interventionist who works with children at risk that we haven't had all year long. And special ed here and there, overworked special educators.
Yes.
That affects the children they're not being able to help, that affects the teachers who are trying to find ways to help those kids, that affects the other kids in the rooms because the existing staff is so overworked. And now you're saying, well, now each building on average, you're gonna be down one more person next year. And I'm not arguing that money's all of a sudden going to appear and you're going to be able to hire these people, but please take that into consideration when you are talking to us, talking about us. How are you going to support your staff when we are going to be even more stressed and more overworked next year with even more kids? Because they're coming and less help. The kids that are coming with more issues, behavior issues, physical issues. And when I say, how are you going to help us? Please don't try to placate us with, we appreciate you. You know, here's pizza. Understand that as hard as you're saying it is for you to make this budget, we appreciate that. We don't want your jobs. We're not sitting up there. We're down here in the trenches. And sometimes we feel like we're like, well, okay. Oh, so you have a child in your class who's not receiving special ed services. All right, make it work. Yes, or para services, and now there's gonna be one less para. Well, I have 18 kindergartners in my class with behaviors that include, and I'm gonna say it right here because my 5-year-olds hear it, fuck you, all day long.
All the time.
And if it's okay for a 5-year-old to repeatedly say that in my classroom, that's wrong. And I just want you to understand that as hard as it is for you to sit there, it's harder for us. And some understanding, some honest appreciation, some asking us for our input on things that are affecting us every day would really go a long way.
Take things off our plate.
Take things off our plate instead of more meetings. Give us time in our classrooms. When we voted for our half release days for the elementary level, we get 0 time in our classrooms. All of those times are filled up with meetings now. That was not the purpose of that MOU.
No, it wasn't. When we asked for those half-day releases, it was to give the elementary teachers it's K-8.
Mhm.
The additional time they needed to grade, to assess, to do all of the things they needed to do.
Vertically aligned curriculum.
Correct, but it was supposed to be teacher directed. And in all of our elementary schools, and maybe one,
And
and the middle school, all of that time is not teacher directed. We have in-service days that are almost completely completely administrative directed. We just had an in-service day. It was wonderful. It was not what we needed at that point. Teachers are so stressed and busy that, and Tom he has the data for this, the amount of people getting sick and taking sick time. Teachers are stressed out, they're spread thin, they're getting told just F off on a regular basis. They're getting assaulted on a regular basis, and teachers are taking their sick time. They will burn out and leave, which is then stressing us out because you have so many subs in the building with kids who aren't the same children they used to be 20 years ago. And if you have a sub, yeah.
Our para subs for us.
Yeah, right.
And
Which
there's
then
no
makes
para.
it one person in your classroom round too. It's like it just like keeps snowballing. And I don't even know where I was going with that.
It's hard.
It's hard, and more things are piling up all the time.
I think you need to appreciate the level of stress that we're living with. I've been a teacher for 18 years. I went to Hartford as well. My children have gone through the district. I have one still left with yours, yeah. And this is the first year I almost quit mid-year. So, and I have been dedicated
to this town and to my school for that entire time. And this year I was almost out. So we're kind of all at the end of our growth.
And I know personally, we are down in interventionists and that impacts our kids
Every day.
drastically. Because we are a Title I school at White River, we have 2 interventions. One is wonderful with math and she's great. The other one is, used to be a special educator, so we're very fortunate that she took over the intervention position. When I asked if the coach who was an intervention person could go back into intervention, no. I was told, no, absolutely not. I understand that the principals are relying on these coaches. But they're also missing time to get trained and doing whatever. They do tasks for the principal in our building, at least. I don't know about the other buildings. We need that person to go back into intervention. That's directly affecting our kids. And the coaches, we have a meeting once a month that we sit there for 2 hours. We're out of our classroom. Luckily, right now, we don't have to do sub-plans because it's covered through
It
things.
won't be next year because it's on Esther's money.
But that's where I'm saying, we need those interventions more than we need the coaches. The coaches, we can look at data, we can,
Yes.
you know, and when I hear the principals say, no, do not touch the coaches, I think, talk to us. I agree with Nicole. Talk to us. We, you know, and I said years ago one time to my principal at the time, I said, cut my budget, I'm okay. And they were like, no, we can't have classroom budgets. This year, mine got cut. I didn't, well, it got frozen without really coming to me and saying, oh, did you realize it was like in a little blurb that it was gonna get frozen, but I didn't realize, so I lost my budget. So that's more money out of my pocket that when I need something, I just go buy it, which I've done for 40 years now anyway, so, but I agree with Nicole, talk to us. We are in the dredges and we know what needs to be done.
We know what we can do without, we know what we need.
Right.
Mr. Zoe, may I ask you a question? For the people that are listening in, when you say coaches, would you explain to the other people that are listening, what coaches you mean? You're not meaning the baseball
Not
coach
the
or the
athletic coaches, no. These are academic coaches.
Yeah.
Not athletic coaches.
That's right.
Sorry.
No, I just want them to make sure that they.
Yeah, one of the issues with the coaches is there's a lot of new teachers because it's such a shortage. There's less trained teachers, there's more new teachers, so the coaches have been really, powerful with that work around instructional practice and curriculum.
We have mentors for those teachers and we also have colleagues that will support those
No, I'm
teachers
just
as
explaining
well.
why it's coming.
But that's why the mentor program started for the new teachers. And I mean, I've been a mentor. Mentor. I mean, my daughter has a wonderful mentor, and I just.
There's a lot of things in our budget that are nice and great to have. But there's a lot of things that we must have, and intervention in your case is certainly one of them. We're short 2 special educators in our building. So our kids aren't getting what they need on a day-to-day basis. And the new special education laws. So I am an interventionist. I'm at Dover and I spend most of my day teaching reading and math to K-3. And we used to only service children who were not on IEPs because we were the sort of let's see if we can get them caught up before they are in need of specialized instruction. And now the special ed laws have changed so that
if a student is falling behind in a subject that is not in their disability area, they are also eligible for intervention. So now there's a need for more intervention than there was. So to hear you have none, or
We have two.
you have two,
We have two. As a head
but
of
one is
school.
not filled.
We had, a third one was supposed to be filled and it wasn't filled.
So just a quick question. During the beginning of the budget cycle, are you asked what your program needs are?
No,
No.
Hi, so everyone see me, hear me. My name is Erica Fallon. I am not an employee of Hartford School District. I am a parent to many dragons. I have three comments. One, just so the board knows, because sometimes as a parent, I don't know what you know and what's going on. We have 3 retiring teachers at OQS, a 3rd grade teacher and 2 5th grade teachers. And when I hear language of not filling positions if they're vacant, I don't know if that job's posted and it's not filled, when we go to make these decisions, does that mean it's vacant? So it won't be filled. Cause I will have a 5th grader next year and another, so like that, the language behind what's being filled and what's being cut is vague to me. So just to let you know, 3 positions at OQS teachers and 4 and 3 classroom teachers. Yeah, so when we did ask at a PTO meeting how that would affect our building, we were, as parents, we were given no answers. Second, to be really clear about the bond issue, if we pass the bond the way it's worded, we will get a roof. Is that what I understand? We'll just get a study for the roof?
No, my understanding is you got a roof.
Well, if with the bond,
Yeah,
right?
with the $21 million.
Full.
With the full bond,
Yes.
we'll get the whole, okay, because that was unclear back here in the stamp. And then the third point, which, Nicole, you brought up, but I had brought up to, our administrator as a parent. I believe as a parent and a taxpayer in the town, and my husband's a veteran, so I'm often at the vet center. And those individuals, a lot of them don't have children in the town, but are taxpayers. I can't sell what I don't know. And I'm in the community trying to drum up like this. And it would be great to have more transparency, with what's being cut, what's staying. We can talk about the good stuff and talk about the stuff that we need to fix. But, you know, we're your best salesman. I am the best unpaid lobbyist you will ever have. Like, that's what, so use us, use the parents, collaborate, obviously, please collaborate with teachers. It's like, I can't say that enough, but find parents and, we need to drum up more support for this, for the bond and the budget, because I don't want to be one of those districts that fail, and then we're doing this until July. That would be unthinkable.
It's great. We had to get to this point to know what we were selling. So we are working on a talking point document for the board that we share with the community around, you know, the budget and the bond, what the impact, what it accomplishes, what it doesn't do. So that'll be good. Well, frequently asked questions, document. So, yeah, definitely listen to everything everyone said and really follow. So I appreciate it. Some questions I have for the administrators based on what you said. So I appreciate it.
See, the reason I asked the question I asked, I was here teaching in this district. So, because I had to participate in the budget process. So that's why I asked that question.
I want to thank all of you for coming here.
So thank you so much. No, but
No, I was just gonna
no,
say,
as clerk, you.
as clerk, I can interrupt you. Thank you.
Done speaking.
I do want to thank each one of you for coming because I've heard many of these stories. before, and, but it makes such, it is such a much more impressionable, I mean, from you, who are out there living it and trying to take care of all of our kiddos, take care of your kiddos at home, take care of yourselves, and to sit back and not be able to have, well, all except for one that sits over there, that she. For the ones at home, that's my daughter, so. But it takes a lot of courage, and it takes more time away from your families, that you already have a lot of time taken away from your families from you, just to do your jobs. We do appreciate you, and, and appreciate the fact that you are coming in here and feeling strong enough to talk to us about it.
No.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say I'm learning a lot every day from this process and from all of you. And I feel like now having heard all that from you, I didn't have the whole story before. And I feel like now I have a lot more of that. And I just want to say we'll do better.
And I think the questions about the bonds, I think it's worth coming and like looking at our schools and looking at what's happening in our classrooms. And the need for improvement, like the greatest investment you can make in your community is in your schools. And our schools need help. Between leaks in gyms and leaks in like, I mean, we have tiles falling down, missing tiles, folding tiles. I mean, there's no ceilings. Like weird. It's weird.
I feel like some of those issues, if it were a hospital, we'd be shut down,
We'd be shut down.
like immediately. They'd be like, you can't, like, so, I mean, we're not, but. Yeah, you look at OQS and you're in the cafeteria and you see these ceiling tiles that are falling you or like.
Yep.
Oh, God, you know, so I had suggested, we did put some pictures up there, it'd be great for like buildings.
That might,
walkthroughs.
it might help people in the community understand what we're talking about, that we're not just, making it up, that our buildings need help,
We included.
Yeah, and I
Pictures.
suggested that we, to our OQS, the particular, maybe you put individual pictures of every building. Like more parents frequent, maybe that website or that PTO Facebook page, or however you feel comfortable, but like. There's a problem with almost like saturation of like too many places to look. So if you got like, well, I only have a kid that I school, only, like, why would I look anywhere else? So maybe individual buildings were responsible for putting up pictures of problems within them. I don't know. Maybe that would attract 2 or 3 more parents to be like, hey, do you know that we have X, Y, and Z going on? Like,
Yeah, if you want support for the bond, we can get you some great pictures. Megan and I were kind of joking around about, we should send a message out and see how many of you dare to go in the middle school elevator. Because
Oh, no.
when,
Sounds like I'm gonna win, but I'm
oh,
not.
I think you should, it's amazing. We always send kids in twos because, and
And
then
then our kids got stuck.
you said, we had students that got stuck and thankfully one of them, this was way back before the yonder pouches had a cell phone and called the main office. So, yeah, yeah, but yeah, there's lots of great evidence we can send you for the support of the bond.
Yes,
Lots.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
again,
for coming.
ladies.
Sorry to talk in front, but.
Thank you.
It was like I said, like an hour.
We'll wait in the word. Sherry's got a kid.
Yeah.
it's
Rainy? Seriously.
So we've got a consent agenda, usually it's just FYI and sort of approve it as a block. There, so there's 3 sets of minutes. I guess if you weren't at all of those, I think maybe you should, right, that's your place, if you weren't there, not really appropriate. And then, appointments. So by law, I have to nominate professional staff to the board. So we have an appointment for Dan Gibson, who's gonna be a teacher in the natural resources program here at the tech center. We have a couple resignations, Chance Lindsay, the Wilder School Special Educator, and Joe James, the middle school athletic director, and then one retirement, Carol Mamrell, the White River School interventionist.
So consent agenda,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Our next meeting is 3/27. Like, yeah, because we're not, we're gonna do any more budget stuff for, unless there's a special meeting which links,
And which then maybe,
and there might be the one.
who's gonna do your evaluation without Peter, yeah.
And
Maybe you want
Nancy,
some phone.
Nancy, please.
Hello? I have nothing in front of me.
It's in your packet, there's a
Okay. Let's. All right. Meeting date is March the 13th, 1924. At the end of the board meeting, each board member and superintendent are an appointed evaluator for the meeting, completes his monitoring report. Responses are shared, and a discussion is held on the areas that need improvement. The chair collects the complete forms to use in the board's monitoring reports. The board was prepared for meeting, satisfactory. Board's time was spent on ends, not means, satisfactory. Each board member was given opportunities to participate, satisfactory. Board treated all persons with courtesy and fairness, satisfactory. Board adhered to Robert's Rules of Order as needed, satisfactory. The board adhered to its adopted governance style. It emphasized outward vision. It encouraged diversity in viewpoints. It exercised strategic leadership, not administrative detail. It maintained distinction between board and staff roles. It used collective decision-making, and it looked to the future. All satisfactory. And, this is the last page. I think that's all of that.
Yeah. Session. Motion to go in. Sheet here. Under items number 2. Permissible reasons for entering executive session. Under 2. 1 VSA. Sub 313A 2-10. Other permissible reasons to include. And we will be using sub sub 313A3. Appointment, employment, or evaluation of public officer or employee. So that's the motion to go into executive session. We have a second.
A second.
All in favor? So moved. See, for open meeting law, they're very specific